honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Judy Mandrell, the co-pastor of Life Changers Church, God in Christ, that's going to be providing the invocation. Dr. Mandrell, thank you so much. If you'd like to join us.
Father, we thank you today for your goodness and your mercy. You have kept us and you have brought us back here one more time. Yeah. We pray for a peaceful spirit in this place. We pray for unity. We pray for peace of mind. We pray for a heart that will understand. Yeah. We pray for unity for the common good of the people of Tallahassee. You have blessed us with our mayor, our city commissioners, those who empower. We ask that you will guide them and lead them. And we just pray for peace in every area of this room. We thank you that love would abide in this place. That's in the God that I believe in. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, if you will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We have had a very productive day already. We started at 10 o'clock this morning with a workshop on ethics. And here we are at the regularly scheduled 3 o'clock meeting. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got a great agenda tonight as we start off every meeting. We'd love to remind you and ask you to join us in helping us set a civil tone as we conduct the business before the City of Tallahassee. And for everyone that is watching us on TV, let us set the example of how it is done right here in Tallahassee. With that, Mr. Manager, do we have any agenda modifications?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've added item 13.05, which is a legislative update. We've also updated item 13.03 to properly reflect the number of software licenses. And materials have been added to your items 5.03, which is a presentation of proclamation for Black History Month. And we've also added materials for item 1302, which is an update on the Sheriff's Council on the status of men and boys.
Excellent. Any questions, colleagues, on the agenda modifications? All right, we're going to move right into presentations. We have 3 presentations today, and 2 of my colleagues will be helping, but everyone is invited to come join us down at the podium if you would like. It is my honor and privilege to ask President LaFonda Wilson and the ladies of the Alpha Epsilon Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated to please come join myself and my colleagues down front for a very special presentation. LaFonda, thank you so much. I want you to notice I wore my blue today, ladies. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, from the governing body of the City of Tallahassee, a proclamation. Whereas Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated was founded January 16th, 1920 in Washington, D.C., constitutionally bound to the brother organization Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. And whereas 5 trailblazing women established an organization built on the principles of scholarship, service, sisterhood, and finer womanhood. And whereas the Alpha Epsilon Zeta chapter, AYZ, was chartered in Tallahassee, Florida on February 16, 1942, nestled within Leon County, AYZ was the first graduate chapter of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated in the state of Florida and the Tallahassee community. And whereas AYZ has been a long-standing pillar within the community, is known for engaging in many social, civic, and philanthropic endeavors within the area, AYZ offers programs to help people improve their minds, bodies, and spirits through its Z-Hope, Zeta's Helping Other People Excel initiative, Stork's Nest Tallahassee, and the Ray and Catherine Yarn Scholarship. And whereas AYZ serves as advisor to 2 collegiate chapters, 3 youth auxiliary groups, the Zeta Mika, thank you, of Tallahassee, and the Zeta Male Network. And whereas, notably, AYZ donated a portrait of the 5 founders in Sorrow Zora Neale Hurston celebration of her body of work and its contribution to the literary world. These historical artifacts were donated to the FAMU Meek Eaton Black Archives. And whereas AYZ and its auxiliaries have given countless hours of voluntary service to educate the public, assist youth, provide scholarships, support organized charities, and promote legislation for social and civic change. And whereas the Alpha Upsilon Zeta chapter is celebrating 80 years of service and poised for another decade and beyond of serving as a community-conscious, action-oriented organization, now therefore I, John Daly, by the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Tallahassee, do hereby recognize the Alpha Upsilon Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, read into the record in witness of each and every one of you, signed today, John E. Daly, February 16th, 2022. Madam President, it is my honor and privilege to present this proclamation to you. Let me give you the microphone, all you.
Can I take this down? Because it's so hard to talk with this on. So we, the ladies of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, the Alpha Upsilon Zeta chapter, would like to thank you, Mayor Daly, and the rest of you, city commissioners, for this esteemed honor and privilege to stand here and receive this. So thank you so very much. And we will be celebrating officially, even though today is our 80th anniversary, our 80th Charter Day, we'll be celebrating March 12th here in Tallahassee, that 80 years that we have been in existence. So thank you so very much.
Excellent.
Okay. Okay, everybody will be good like that. All right, in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, I trust everybody's smiling. All right, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. All right, big smiles. How's that? All right, 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1.
I want to thank the Mayor Pro Tem for presenting the next proclamation, and I would like to ask, is Tiffany McCaskill here from the American Heart? Tiffany, please come join us. Tiffany McCaskill representing the American Heart Association, and I'm going to turn it over to the Mayor Pro Tem for the presentation.
Hi. Good afternoon. It is my pleasure on behalf of the mayor and my colleagues on the City Commission, Tiffany, to present this proclamation to you on behalf of the American Heart Association. And the proclamation reads, whereas cardiovascular disease affects men, women, and children of every age and race in the United States, from 2019 to 2020, deaths from heart disease increased by 4.8%, the largest increase in heart disease deaths since 2012, and stroke deaths increased in the same period by 6%. Cardiovascular disease continues to be the leading cause of death in the United States. And whereas in 2015, cardiovascular disease accounted for $555 billion in healthcare expenditures and lost productivity, And by 2035, cardiovascular disease will account for, I don't even know this number. It's got so many zeros. Okay? Somewhere in the zillions, maybe, in healthcare expenditures and lost productivity annually. And whereas the global COVID-19 disease pandemic poses significant high risk to individuals with CVD, cardiovascular disease, and risk factors, and whereas individuals in the U.S. have made great progress in reducing the death rate for cardiovascular disease, but this progress has been more modest with respect to the death rate of cardiovascular disease in women and minorities. And whereas cardiovascular diseases are the #1 killer of women in the U.S., killing more women than all forms of cancer combined, and cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of maternal death in the U.S., or more simply put, heart disease is the #1 killer of new moms. And whereas women, especially Black and Hispanic women, are disproportionately impacted by heart disease and stroke, and research shows heart attacks are on the rise in younger women. Yet younger generations of women, Gen Z and millennials, are less likely to be aware of their greatest health threat, including knowing the warning signs of heart attacks and strokes. Now, therefore, I, John Daly, by the authority vested in him as mayor of the City of Tallahassee, does hereby recognize February as American Heart Month in the City of Tallahassee and urge all citizens to show their support for the fight against heart disease by commemorating this month by increasing awareness, speaking out about heart disease, and empowering others to reduce their risk for cardiovascular diseases. We can save thousands of lives each year. And that's signed by the Mayor, Johnny Daly, February 16th, 2022. Tiffany? Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Richardson, and commissioners, thank you so much for this proclamation. As the Mayor Pro Tem read, heart disease continues to be the #1 cause of death, and through awareness such as American Heart Month and this proclamation, we can educate people on how to take care of themselves as far as preventing and treating heart disease, and hopefully that will lead to longer, healthier lives. Here in the City of Tallahassee, many organizations already have events, and a lot of the clinics already do things for heart health. So let's just keep up that good work. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Tiffany. Let's get a picture. Tiffany, thank you, and keep up the great work in our community. Folks, I appreciate you bearing with me, and I'm very appreciative of my colleagues helping out. As you can imagine, reading all of the proclamations with the mask is a bit of a challenge, and so I really do appreciate my friends and colleagues helping out as well. For our final presentation this evening, I'd like to call on Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox for a very special presentation on Black History Month. Commissioner Cox.
Thank you, Mayor. And I understand that Mrs. Barnes will be receiving this. So you want to come on down, Mrs. Barnes?
Dr. Myers.
And Dr. Myers.
Dr. Myers.
Whereas the contributions of African Americans have helped shape and mold the rich history of our nation, and whereas African American History Week, celebrated in February, was created in 1926 in the United States by historian Carter G. Woodson, and whereas Black History Month was first recognized by President Gerald Ford in 1976, and whereas the historic John G. Riley House was built in the 1890s and was the home of John G. Riley, an activist, business leader, and principal of the first Black public high school for African Americans in Tallahassee, which is known as Lincoln High School. And whereas the John G. Riley Center and Museum has been a staple for African American history and culture,
and was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1978. And whereas in December 2021, the John G. Riley Center and Museum hosted its first statewide history conference, Journey to Emancipation, which brought together historians, educators, and community leaders to discuss the significance of the Emancipation Proclamation. And whereas we celebrate the John G. Riley Center and Museum being awarded an African American Civil Rights Grant from the National Park Service Historic Preservation Fund that will support a publication chronicling the history of African American educators in Leon County. And whereas the City of Tallahassee remains dedicated to the preservation of Black history in Tallahassee. Now, therefore, he, John E. Daly, by the authority vested in him as mayor of the City of Tallahassee, do hereby recognize February as Black History Month.
Thank you, Commissioner Daly. Sorry, I just demoted you, Mayor Daly. And commissioners, he's around us so much and is just so much a part of us that it's a wonder I didn't just say John. It's a pleasure to be here, and I am very appreciative for this recognition. There was a lot of reference, of course, to the city and county, and that's very important. For those of you who do not know, the Riley House is not only a local treasure, but a statewide treasure. It is the headquarters of the Florida African American Heritage Preservation Network, of which 32 museums are a part. And when we had the conference that Commissioner Cox referenced, we had 147 people here. And of those, all of the networks were here. And I must say we did a good job. Our job was to educate about the history of emancipation, because we found that a lot of people do not know that Florida has an Emancipation Day, which is May 20th, 1865. So we kind of did our job well, in a way too good, because I've been doing an assessment for May 20th this year, 2022, and about 12 of the museums who came to the conference will be doing their first emancipation celebration and commemoration in their own cities and counties this year. And so that is what we do. The Riley House is not only a museum, but a research center, an education center, and a change agent for the better. And in this environment, the museums are going to be very important to make sure that history is taught correctly. Thank you.
Thank you.
When Ms. Altamise Barnes is in the room, I defer to Ms. Barnes. She also told me that she was retiring, but retiring is not in her DNA. And we're grateful for that. She continues to advise and support, and so we're so grateful for Ms. Barnes, and thank you all for this honor.
Take a picture.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
before we go forward, I would like to recognize a very special person who has already participated on the agenda, but I would like to say happy belated birthday to the ultimate sister girl, Pastor Judy Mandrell.
Oh, my
We
goodness.
celebrated her birthday this past weekend.
Happy birthday.
She's 36 years old.
Pastor Mandrell, if you don't mind, did you celebrate on Saturday or Sunday or?
Oh, yeah.
Citywide party. Just keep the noise down. We're going to discuss that later on tonight, all right? Excellent, excellent. But your birthday was this past Sunday?
Yes.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Yeah, thank you for that. All right, Mr. Manager, do we have any appearances by other city commission appointed boards, committees, or other governments?
No, sir, we do
Are
not.
there any announcements to come before this board?
No, sir.
All right, we will handle citizen input on agenda items as we hit the agenda items. We are now on the consent agenda. Have any items been pulled off the consent agenda?
No, sir.
All right.
Move consent, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have any public comment on consent agenda?
No, sir.
All right, so I got a motion by the Mayor Pro Tem to move consent, seconded by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously 5-0. By the way, colleagues, if I could take a second, we have got a great agenda. Of course, we will spend as much time as we need on every single issue. I do believe, though, that we will be able to get through our agenda, possibly even get through the sharing of ideas before the 6 o'clock public hearing. If not, then of course we'll continue afterwards, but that's my goal this evening, okay? Okay. So we are on item number 11.01.
Yes, Mayor, I'll take that item. Item 1101 is an appointment to the Special Events Advisory Committee. As you all know, each of you appoints an individual to this body, and tonight's item is Mayor Daley's appointment of Bob Griedo to the Special Events Advisory Committee. It's here for you to recognize. So the motion would be to recognize the appointment of Mr. Griedo.
Excellent. Bob, you here? Give me a wave. No, that's okay, though. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
All right, I'll make the motion for appointment. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right, it's properly seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Passes unanimously 5-0. All right, what we're going to do is, instead of taking up 12.01, which is the introduction of the ordinance, it has been suggested by the city attorney to take up 13.01 first, see what the direction is of this body, and then do the introduction of the ordinance, okay?
Okay.
So why don't we go ahead and take up 13.01, the approval of the revised noise ordinance. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Let me invite Police Chief Revel and Deputy Police Chief Holmes to come forward. I'd like to ask Deputy Chief Holmes to make a short presentation. As he comes forward, Commissioners, you'll recall you discussed this topic at your retreat in January, your 2022 retreat. And what was shared was over the last couple of years, somewhat pandemic induced. We know we've had parking lot parties in the past, but we've seen a growth in those and really a chronic disturbance in some parts of our community. The police have invested more than 6,000 hours with a crowd control unit to address it. While they're doing a good job, it's not the most efficient use of resources. And so TPD, in collaboration with our city attorney's office, have inspected the noise ordinance in particular, and you have a recommendation before you tonight to modify that noise ordinance. There are two options for your consideration. One largely keeps the ordinance intact as it exists. It makes it workable and includes penalties for that. The other expands it in more uniform fashion throughout our community and eliminates what's referred to at times as the entertainment district. I won't go any deeper into those details because I know the Deputy Chief will talk about that a little bit, but that's what's in front of you tonight. We're looking for your direction, Mr. Mayor, as you indicated. With that direction, then we can move to an introduction of ordinance, if you would like, and then introduce new local law that would impact this topic. So with that, let me turn it over to Deputy Chief Holmes for a
Chief
further
Revel,
explanation.
Deputy Chief Holmes, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commission. Thank you for having us. As he said, we currently have a noise ordinance that really is unenforceable. It's an ordinance to where we have to have a complainant to actually want to give up their address, and we respond to that location. And then we have to identify the source of the noise, and then we'll have to get decimal readers to read and ensure that the noise is above the decimal amounts, which is really unenforceable. So what we're proposing is, with the help of the city attorneys, that we have this new ordinance, option 1, in which we're able to be the complainant in that option. We're able to actually go in and take a proactive approach to a lot of these pop-up parties. We're able to go in and make a discretionary decision, and we're able to enforce an ordinance that could more than likely reduce the complaints that we're all receiving as it regards to the consistency of the excess noise at these pop-up parties. It's also a tool that we can use to address our violent crime issues at this location, at these locations. We know that in these gatherings, there's the use of alcohol, there's a lot of drug activity, and those are ingredients for disaster. So by us being able to actually go in and enforce the noise ordinance, which is the nexus to these pop-up parties and the disturbances that is interfering with the quality of life of our citizens here in Tallahassee, we're able to go in and address those issues proactively, make a discretionary decision, cite these individuals if they're in violation, and also clear that location without having to get the store owners or the business owners involved. We, as law enforcement, can act as the complainant. Under the current ordinance, we cannot act as complainants. So we're recommending option 1. We're thinking that document and that ordinance it really fits our needs. It fits what we need to do our job and go out here and enforce the laws and the ordinances of the city, and also help reduce the complaints that we're receiving that we're not able to do anything about right now, to enhance the quality of life of all those individuals who live around these areas. We're recommending option 1.
Excellent.
Any questions?
Thank you. Commissioner Porter.
I'll have questions after public comment. Do we
Okay.
want to take public comment first?
Sounds good. Any final comments, Mr. Manager?
No, sir.
All right. Do we have any public comment on this item? Mr. Cook.
Mayor, we do.
Okay.
We have several. We'll start with Eric Mullins. And as the first speaker approaches, I'll let people know you have 3 minutes for your remarks. I'll let you know when you're at 2.5, but the green light in front of you will also turn yellow at that point. And if you'll give your name and address for the record, we would appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, and thanks for having this brought up finally. We've been trying for about 6 years to get some traction on this. I work at the Residence Inn on Gain Street and Railroad. We've got significant issue with the noise. I appreciate all the hard work and effort everybody's put into getting that reduced, and comments from the law enforcement. My main concern is when you start breaking up these parties outside the urban core. They're permitted in the urban core. You're not saving money. You're relocating a problem to our area, and that's not acceptable for us. We've already got a lot of issues with that, with the noise, with GBO, with the pop-up parties. I'm sure you guys have seen my emails. You've seen the pictures of people dancing with assault rifles at pop-up parties. We don't want more of that. It just needs to go away. We need a workable noise ordinance in the area. There's no reason the noise can't be limited at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. You know, I know there's contention about the windows in the building, things like that, but when you got a stereo system that big pointed right at you, windows aren't going to solve the problem. And we really don't want more problem. We don't want North Monroe's issue coming into Railroad and Gaines. So, I mean, other than that, I just appreciate we finally get a chance to even discuss it.
Thank you.
That's all I've got.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Our next speaker, Mr. Clerk.
Next speaker is Keith. I'm going to let Keith give you his last name. He'll be followed by Stanley Sims.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you for having us. I'm Keith Hoogerhide. I'm general manager of the Residence Inn and also the new AC by Marriott located down at the Capitol Cascades. 600 West Gain Street for the Residence Inn would probably be most appropriate. I've been in the industry for about 40 years. I've been with Marriott International for 25 years, and I've been a resident of Tallahassee and at the Residence Inn location since 2006. We've been enduring the negative and ongoing escalating cycle of significant issue with the urban core since its passing several years ago. We've worked closely and extensively with the city staff and the leadership of TPD to try to find a reasonable workaround and solutions, Band-Aid solutions, unsuccessfully. Thousands of travelers have now left Tallahassee with negative experiences, including distinguished guests from the city's highest economic generators, FSU's campus for speakers and visiting faculty, as well as parents and potential students, international scientists for the Mag Lab, and travelers from around the world with Danfoss. All have been negatively impacted by the results of the urban core policies. Being in the business of hospitality, we deeply appreciate a strong entertainment component as part of the work, live, play, which is what our neighborhood was specifically designed around when the revitalization project for Gain Street came about in 2006. It is the fun experiences that most of the guests are going to have as a memory when they leave Tallahassee. And there is no doubt that if you have a well-balanced entertainment component, it will lead us to the thriving environment that we have all worked very hard in the community to try to achieve and be successful at. The current state is not creating the environment that allows us to expand the diversity of the live component. It is throttling the 18-hour concept that we have worked very hard to try to achieve in the downtown area. It is the result in the awful negative experiences that we have heard repeatedly day after day from the guests who choose to stay in the Gain Street area that lead us to tell you that it is clearly evident that option 2 is the only option that will restore the balance that is needed for the urban core to continue its path to be what it is that we envision.
You have about 20 seconds.
Option 1 will only continue to damage the district's ability to attract the quality residents needed and the businesses required for the successful trio. We deeply appreciate your time, energy, and focus on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, our next speaker.
Next speaker is Stanley Sims, and then we'll hear from Altamese Barnes.
Excellent. Your name and address for the record, please.
Mr. Mayor, I survived Valentine, so my address is still 1320 Avondale Way. I'm Stanley Sims. I'm here today in support of option 1. This is a demonstration of common sense policing. Why do I define it as common sense policing? Because the deputy chief has explained to us in plain language that measurement of what we currently have is impossible. And it's evident by data, and not from the people of Falls and Gain Street, but also the residents who have invested in this community over and over and over again to build facilities like Gain Street. They aren't complaining as well. So I stand today, Chief. I also want to give a shout out to a sergeant that saw me in Publix, TPD sergeant. Said, "Hello, Mr. Sims," me straightening out a matter about my sandwich. When you explain things in plain language, It's hard to argue with that. I've learned, Commissioner Richardson, if you miss it, I'm on People's Court today. It's been aired. 850-544-6852. Hit my Facebook page. If you miss it today, it'll probably be going live. That if you explain your case, no matter how much they ignore you, they cannot ignore the facts.
You're at 30 seconds.
With that 30 seconds, I'm going to give those of silence and good behavior to my good friend who's celebrating her birthday, Pastor Judy Mandrell, and another young lady that I love, Ms. Altamise Barnes, for the contributions that you have made in our community. And I'm walking down a path that you have created. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please, Mr. Clerk.
Next is Altamise Barnes, and then we'll move to our virtual connected speakers.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Altamise Barnes, 2619 Summerwood Avenue. And I stand in total support of what is being recommended as the change ordinance. I think it's recommendation 1. I live 4 blocks from Denny's and the Circle K on North Monroe Street. We have been getting up over the past 2 years, that's when the issue started, getting up 1:30, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning with our cell phones to call the call center because we can't rest at night. It appears as though the clubs are closing at 11, 12, and then some say, well, they don't have anywhere else to go. Well, we have been in our homes, some of us since the 60s, and we see the sale signs going up constantly now because the noise is just overwhelming. When you live 4 streets away, and that time of morning, you're up in your pajamas, you need to come, something's happening. And it's not just the noise that's been said. We have violence. We have unsafe area trying to get in. Well, I don't even go over the Circle K area anymore. But we've had a couple of our neighbors pass away, senior white gentlemen who were surviving cancer. But they've started to have to sleep with earplugs and sit up a lot even during the day with the earplugs. So that's a life that seniors should not have to. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, our next speaker.
Our next speaker is Randy Dinker and should be connected via WebEx.
Dinker, are you with us?
Randy Dinker, 552 East Georgia Street. I think what you're hearing from people is unanimous understanding that there's a noise problem and that it's not been very well dealt with under our current regulatory system. But as the president of the Lafayette Park Neighborhood Association, I can tell you that the #1 complaint that I hear from my members is the noise problem, and these pop-up parties are really putting a lot of stress and pressure on people who have to get up the next day and work. And what we have isn't working. So I think we're all in agreement with that. Now, I very carefully read both of the ordinance proposals that are going before you, and it is my opinion that ordinance number one is going to be a step backwards for us, because ordinance number 1 allows any amount of noise up to 2 a.m. in the urban core, and if it's in the urban core, it doesn't matter how far it's carrying. The police will not have any authority to do anything about it. However, I would recommend that you adopt ordinance number 2, because ordinance number 2 will get us where we want to go. Ordinance number 2 allows the police to take a common sense regulatory approach and to shut down unreasonable amounts of noise regardless of where it is and regardless of when it occurs. And they won't have to carry around those cumbersome, difficult-to-use decibel meters and so on. The only thing that, that we would recommend is that in adopting ordinance number 2, you cut and paste some language from ordinance number 1, which defines some exceptions to the noise ordinance, such as for emergency vehicles like ambulances with sirens and garbage trucks and necessary services like that. And there's a list of them in ordinance number 1 that could be and should be transferred to ordinance number 2. And if that is done, I think ordinance number 2 will serve our purposes very well to deal with these pop-up parties and some of the other noise problems that we've been having and that have been a really bad problem for as long as I've lived near the inner core. Another problem that I have with the way that ordinance number 1 is drawn is the map of the urban core. And the map that they have drawn is unnecessarily large, in my opinion. It goes all the way to and includes North Calhoun Street. And if you know North Calhoun Street at all, you know that there are not only a lot of residences on that street, but there's mostly some professional offices which close at night. There's no reason for that to be in the urban core. And so that puts it only 1 block away from the boundary of the Lafayette Park Neighborhood Association, 1 block. And that's really, I think, way too close to us, to the urban core.
Thank you, Ms.
So,
thank you.
yeah, so we're recommending number 2 with that 1 change. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Clerk.
Our next speaker is Pierce Rawling, and that's the final speaker we have on this item.
I'm sorry, the name of the next speaker?
Pierce Rawling.
Mr. Rawling, Pierce Rawling. Pierce Rawling.
I see the name top center of the screen, but I don't see it activating.
Pierce Rawling.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you so much for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Piers Rawling. I reside at 1320 Gulf Terrace Drive. The zip is 32301, and I'm president of the Myers Park Neighborhood Association, but I'm here also representing the Alliance of Tallahassee Neighborhoods to speak in favor of option 2 and against option 1, the option recommended by staff. Option 2 shares the benefits of option 1 in abandoning decibel meters and using a plainly audible standard so that it is enforceable, but it has significant downsides. I emailed a letter on this topic to you earlier in which I pointed out a potential ambiguity in the wording of option 1, but I'm going to speak against the reading of that option according to which it proposes to permit unlimited noise emanating from the urban core until 2 a.m. each day, regardless of how loud that noise is at residences outside the urban core. I have several concerns about this proposal. Here are 3. First, it ignores the fact that some of the large gatherings in parking lots that have been causing so much trouble have taken place in the urban core, and these will likely increase in number if this option is passed and prevents these gatherings taking place elsewhere. Option 1 risks merely relocating one of the problems it is trying to solve. The members of these gatherings will quickly realize that they can make as much noise as they want until 2 a.m. as long as they travel to within the urban core to do it. Second, I cannot emphasize strongly enough how detrimental the implementation of this proposal would be, not only to those neighborhoods inside the urban core, but also to all those surrounding it and even further afield. Some of the urban core bars and clubs and the vehicles that frequent the urban core can emit deafening amounts of noise, particularly with their bass speakers. It is this, the high dBc levels, that rattles doors and windows. And this deafening noise can travel for a mile or more without any marked decrease in intensity. Just ask a sound engineer. So this option would exacerbate the noise problem that dogs the downtown neighborhoods. At least under the current noise ordinance, which imposes decibel limits, we can call the police at any time with some hope of relief. Under option 1, on the other hand, we would have to endure the row until 2 a.m. before there would be any point in contacting the police. Third, bars and clubs are not the only downtown businesses. What about, for example, hotels and restaurants? You've just heard from 2 hoteliers. And whilst it's certainly true that studies show people drink faster when the music is loud, why should bar profits outweigh the sleep and sanity of neighborhood residents and the profits of other businesses? I urge you to reject option 1 and vote instead for option 2 with some modifications, the ones that Randy Denker just mentioned.
You have about 15 seconds.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Certainly appreciate it. Mr. Clerk, our next speaker.
Mr. Mayor, that is the last speaker on this item.
All right. DC Holmes, will you come back up real quick, and would you like to address any of the concerns that were brought up by the citizens, and remain up there because I'm sure we'll have some questions as well. And Commissioner Porter, I'll come to you first.
Yes, sir. In regards to the urban core, we just looked at it as it's downtown, it's businesses located in bars, et cetera. We saw it as extended use of resources, and we can allocate our resources better if we maintain the current urban core that we have. If it's allowed, we maybe ended up, as we say, chasing our tails, and using the same resources we got now to remove parties from different locations. We'll be using those same resources in the urban core on a consistent manner. Furthermore, it's after 2 a.m., it's also just like the rest of the city for 24 hours. It is enforceable.
What if there's a pop-up party at 10 o'clock at night outside of the urban core in the neighborhood? Are we saying that it's not enforceable?
You say outside the urban core? Or
yeah, just say it's in the neighborhood and there's a pop-up party and you can hear it 4 blocks away at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night.
Outside the urban core, it is enforceable. Inside the urban core, it's going to be a little more challenging because if it's in a business district, it'll be something we'll have to address on a case-by-case basis.
So there's a bar on Gain Street that's got a live band at 1 o'clock in the morning in the urban core, but it can be heard in Myers Park.
Right.
How do we handle that?
We'll have to address it on a case-by-case basis. We would, of course, go and try to make contact with that individual, try to gain voluntary compliance to let them know that they're disturbing communities outside of the urban core location and try to get them to turn that music down, just as we do now.
Excellent. Okay. And I understand through the city attorney that Lou Norvell is also here as a deputy city attorney who worked on this particular ordinance that can help answer any of the legal aspects of the ordinance as well. Commissioner Porter, let's start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, like everyone, have gotten a bunch of emails. I know y'all have been dealing with this for years, especially the past 2 years. I have a couple of questions. So, because frankly, I don't really love either option. Okay, let me start from the beginning. Do both options allow the enforcement of parked cars that are making sound?
Yes.
Okay. And that is without trespassing because in this case, TPD can act as the complainant?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What is the situation about, and Madam Attorney, feel free to interject, with option 1 having no limit at all? Because I know that has been said by some of the ATN folks as far as between the hours until 2 a.m. because my understanding is getting rid of the decibel level and the way that we're measuring the noise. So it can literally be as loud as people want? Like beyond what we even used to allow, that was measured?
I think what we've heard Deputy Chief Holmes say is that they will go in and they will try to get voluntary compliance. Obviously, if they see some other violation of state law or perhaps the city code, they could take some action on that. But I think the chief way during the time before the ordinance can be enforced, which is before 2 a.m., they're going to attempt to get voluntary compliance.
Okay. Can you explain to me, I tried to ask the city attorney and we didn't have a lot of time before this meeting, how it impacts TPD's ability to enforce if we were to have the receiving property line standard that is what we have now. So right now, even if there's a bar in the urban core, if you live outside the urban core and you can hear it and it's at an unreasonable level, TPD, you don't have the enforcement you need, but that is a violation technically. Whereas now, if you live outside the urban core, there's no remedy if a business within the urban core can be heard from your property, because we've gotten away with the receiving property line. The noise is measured not at where it is heard, but at the source of the noise.
Right, source of the noise.
Can you explain to me, it's not a trick question, I'm just, because that's concerning to me. Can you explain to me how that change helps TPD?
From the current ordinance to what we're proposing?
Yes, getting rid of the receiving property line to the source of the noise.
Well, first, the current ordinance we have, you have to have a complainant.
Right.
We can't, as police, we can't be the complainant.
I guess my question is there why can't we have option one, but with the receiving line that we had in the current ordinance?
Chief, if I may, thank you. One of the things that I want everybody to understand is when we were working with the city attorney's office, the issue that we were looking at is the efficient allocation of resources. And so if we take away the entertainment district, then we are going to take the resources that we use now, the 6,000 hours, the $250,000 that we spent trying to chase these things all over town, and we're going to have to now place those in dealing with all of the entertainment district, which typically is not a problem for us. I know GVO is certainly an issue, and we continue to work with the management there, which we will continue to do. But option one gives us the ability to properly allocate the resources, to enforce it throughout the areas that it needs to be without just simply taking those resources and now moving them to a different issue, which we're going to be chasing all over in the entertainment district and dealing with specifically businesses other than one or two, which we typically don't have to deal with now.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm understanding. What I'm hearing from what you just said is you could do your job, the enforcement part, with the receiving property line standard that we currently have, but that stretches your resources more than you're comfortable with at this point. I guess my question is, is that a compromise between option one and two for folks who are outside of the urban core?
I think the key component of both of them, but specifically the difference for one and two, I think I just explained. But the difference for us is by allowing us to be the complainant, we are going to be able to go deal with those specific issues wherever they are. So we don't need a property line anywhere. We can simply go deal with that issue. And that's the difference. If you put a line on it, then we're bound by where that line is and how far it is from it and where our officers have to be. That's a burden we don't need to put on the officers that are out there trying to deal with the situation. If we simply allow them to be the complainant, allow them to deal with a noise that's unreasonable, then that's a reasonable standard. We can enforce that and be much more efficient in that allocation of resources.
But that's only outside the urban core.
We still are going to deal with the noise in the urban core just like we always have.
Okay.
But it's going to give us more issues. And, we can't say whether, the concern of whether all these pop-up parties are going to go down into the urban core and create more issues.
What would you do then?
That's speculation.
But what would you do then?
Well, again, we would deal with the business owners because most of the businesses down there, other than the entertainment businesses, don't want that around. So we simply deal with them, we get them to leave, and we shut it down just like we normally would.
Okay. And what about, do we have an opinion on the exemptions? Do you in particular have an opinion? Because that seemed like kind of intense to me, that option, I know I know the recommendation is option one, but I'm just curious why we took the exemptions out of option two.
The exemptions keep us from, again, wasting resources on chasing things that are common business part of operating a government that we're going to need to do. You know, you heard some of the examples of sirens and trash trucks and things like that. So it keeps our officers from having to deal with those complaints that come in and saying that, I don't care what you say, officer, there's an ordinance that says that it can't be that noise, and that's unreasonable. We know that sirens are loud. They're loud for a reason, you know, and so, but they're necessary. And so it would keep us from having to deal with those type of complaints that, again, are part of our everyday business.
Well, and that I understand, but for option 2, is there a reason we removed the exemptions?
So our thought with regard to option 2 is that we were trying to just have a totally level playing field, but we know that the officers are going to utilize their discretion when they go out at any rate. I don't think we've had any type of citation regarding generators or government buildings, anything of that nature. So it was just to give that total coverage regarding the noise ordinance.
Okay, and I just have one more question, I think probably to the city manager or the city attorney. Is there, you know, is it an option for us? Because I know sort of what I wanted out of this was not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but see if we make these changes, if it makes a difference. For those who are concerned, if option 1 is adopted, is there the ability we can say, we will make sure that we bring this back in 6 months for a review or a reevaluation? We're not compelled to take any action, but so that it, you know, I hate to hear how long it's taken for us to get to this point, and if people have some kind of assurance that we're going to check in 6 months, is that something we can do?
Certainly, if it's the will of the commission, we can have a provision that provides for a 6-month or 1-year review.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, other questions, comments? Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief and Deputy Chief. There's a lot of pop-up parties where we're getting a lot of complaints. If we go with option 1, is that enough to address the issues that we're hearing about?
We believe it is, yes, sir.
Okay. Looking at option 1 and option 2, I think there are tweaks that could be made to make either of them better, but I also think if we start substantially changing any of these ordinances, it's going to kick the time frame back to where we'll have to introduce it again. I'm going to recommend whatever we adopt today. We also schedule a public hearing as soon as possible in 10 days, not wait till March 9th, so we can go ahead and start enforcing as soon as possible. So with that being said, we recognize the majority of the issues that this would address. We've also heard about other issues that may be in the urban core, and there may be ways to address those more specifically, especially very large sound systems outdoors and those sorts of things. I don't think we're doing that now, but I do think if we move forward with option 1 today, we can see a dramatic reduction in sound complaints that we're seeing, and then also not closing the door on looking at other things further, but it would be helpful to know. You know better than we do everywhere a complaint comes from. So I think if you're confident option 1 maybe not eliminates the sound issues completely, but dramatically reduces it, then I'm comfortable supporting that today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. I will go ahead and make the motion for option number 1, move forward, knowing that we will come back and see what the positive or negative impacts are and where we need to go from there. There's a second to the motion by the Mayor Pro Tem. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you. I just have a quick comment. I know this may be how we usually do things. I really wish that we could have handled this in a different way rather than this come to us as 2 ordinances. I had asked that we have some kind of workshop or special meeting. I feel like we could have reached some kind of compromise and a better way for the public to engage with this issue. And I think it's unfortunate that there's so much debate when I feel like there could have been some more opportunity for public involvement on an issue that is so important. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we have had lots of public input into this. Everywhere I go, I hear about it. about 1.5 miles from my house in the Piggly Wiggly Shopping Center. I hear about it. And so I think we've had a lot of public input into it. I get text messages all the time, but what I do want to do is trust the professionals who have been working this issue, not on a part-time basis, but they deal with it every night of the week. And they have come to us and said that option 1 is what they would like to try. Give it an opportunity to work or not work. We've done that before. But I'm willing to trust the professionals who have the expertise and who deal with this on a daily basis. I'm willing to trust what they recommend to us that they think will best help them improve the quality of life for residents in this city. And so that's why I seconded the motion and will support option 1 until the professionals come back to us. If there's still continue to be complaints by citizens, then certainly we can address it even sooner than 6 months. But until the professionals come back to us and say, we've got to do something different, I'm willing to give this a try.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too will be supporting this motion, but I wanted to say to residents I was at your hotel last night, and I heard what you hear. And I don't have an answer. I don't have a solution. But I think if we start here and work our way to a better solution, we're doing something that we've been trying to do for a while. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for doing all that you can and the best you can. And your neighbor right here, Gain Street Pies, he's going to help you get GVO to turn it down. So call him. Call Matlow. No, call him down there and ask him to talk to his neighbor to tell him to turn it down a little bit.
We have the chief of police with us today, and you can call him.
No, I'm just kidding, but really and truly, I was there last night, and I did hear. It's not a phantom. I understand, but we've got to start somewhere. And in regards to Ms. Barnes, I know that she does call because we've had these conversations. But I also want to say kudos to those businesses who are trying to work with us. Mm-hmm. Because the first person I heard this from was my little Sunday school member, DJ Little Boy. And he's doing all that he can. I know he's working with Deputy Chief. He's doing all that he can with what he's doing over there. But it's just the neighbors around him, some of the neighbors around him that are not working with him. So now the police has a tool to help those neighbors understand that they need to work with him because he hires his own security and everything, right, to keep that parking lot clear. So kudos to those businesses that are doing some things to try to help us with this. And kudos to you guys and the city attorney's office and everyone else who worked to get us this far. But as we need to, we will try to go further to try to help situations such as the residents in. So thank you all for your patience.
Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify, my comment about public input was not about general public input, because I know we've heard a lot of that. It was about input specifically on these options, which we only had a week ago. Thank you.
Okay, motion's on the table made by me, the mayor, seconded by the mayor pro tem for option number 1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1 with Commissioner Porter in dissent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, we are committed, and I echo my sentiments from my colleagues as well. And I look forward to meeting with y'all one-on-one as well. We are on item number 12.01, Madam Attorney. Before we get started, though, a very special introduction. I want to recognize Sophia Warfel, who has joined us. Sophia, give me a wave. Sophia is a student at Holy Comfort Elementary School that actually reached out to my office, wants to learn more about government, and wants to come shadow. So we invited her to come today to the City Commission meeting. We are thrilled to have you here, young lady. Thank you so much. And Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, after this next agenda item, I will probably pass the gavel for an item so I can go spend a little time out there. I'll still be participating in voting, but after the next item, we'll probably come spend some time for a second. Sophia, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Madam Attorney, we are on 12.01.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 12.01 is the introduction of ordinance number 22-0-13, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending Chapter 12, Article 4, Division 2 of the Tallahassee Code of General Ordinances concerning noise disturbances, providing for conflicts, severability, and an effective date. The recommended action is option 1, introduce ordinance number 22-0-13, designated 1, attachment 1, and set the first and only public hearing for March 9th, 2022 at 6:00 p.m. in the City of Tallahassee City Commission Chambers at City Hall.
Excellent. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir. We took all of the speakers with 1301, so we're done.
All right, excellent. We're on item number 12.01. Colleagues looking for direction, comment.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Matlow.
I just wanted to ask everyone if there was interest in taking this up sooner than March 9th. We get lots of calls and people don't understand why it takes an introduction and a public hearing, and we've explained that. But since our next meeting is 3 weeks out, would it be agreeable to try to maybe just 10 days out come in and do one public hearing with the one item? I wanted to ask that question before.
Sure.
Mayor.
Mr. Clerk, you want to walk us through the timelines and legal obligations we have?
Correct. So with the public hearing, we do have to provide notice, and so there's a 10-day notice requirement. There's also a lead time to get the notice published. So the soonest we could possibly do it would be March 2nd, which would be just, I guess, 1 week ahead of the March 9th date, which was originally contemplated. So it would have to be some date between March 2nd and 8th to get any sooner than the 9th that we already have a scheduled meeting.
Excellent. Madam Attorney, any other comment?
No, that's all my comments as well.
Okay, back on the ordinance.
No further comments?
Motion, direction? I'm looking for a motion for recommended options.
I would move staff recommendation.
Okay, staff recommendation
Mayor.
based on the previous option. Madam Attorney, will you please, for the record, explain what that recommendation is for option number 1 of the previous?
So option number 1 provided for the sound ordinance, which would maintain the urban core, and therefore noise disturbances would only be enforced in the urban core after 2 a.m., and there will be a change of standard, which would be a clearly audible standard, which means clearly audible by an unaided hearing device at a point of 100 feet or more.
Excellent. Anything else need to be read into the record for the introduction? Moving forward.
That's it, Mayor.
Colleagues, when you look at the options 1, 2, or 3, we are referencing option number 1, which is the introduction of ordinance number 22-0-13 designated paren 1. All right, Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Just for a point of clarification for those who are listening, because I've heard reference being made to the device that has been used in the past. There no longer be a need for the device. It will be these devices that the police will use, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the recommended option has been moved properly by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Did I get that straight? Motion, second. Okay, any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1 with Commissioner Porter in dissent. We are now on item number 13.02. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Let me invite Deputy City Manager Cynthia Barber to join me for this one and recognize Sheriff Walt McNeil and his command staff.
Sheriff, thanks for joining us.
It's good to see the sheriff in his leadership, and I'll tee this up very quickly. And the sheriff has a presentation that's just been queued in our system that he would like to share with you. But you'll recall in January at your meeting, you indicated your support to participate in the proposed council for the status of men and boys. And this item has also been discussed by the Leon County Commission. In fact, last week they discussed it and pledged a funding commitment to the tune of $70,000 and scheduled another meeting, I believe it's on March 8th, to talk about this. We have in your agenda materials summarized it, included the latest proposal that the sheriff has shared with us that outlines how the council may work, kind of the organization of it, and startup funding that would be necessary. The recommended option is to reserve up to $140,000 from the City of Tallahassee for startup funding for the proposed council and bring back additional information at your March 23rd meeting regarding the organizational structure, any additional details on startup funding and projected operational costs. Leon County Schools, as I understand, has pledged the commitment toward the council, but they've not taken it up as it relates to any funding proposal. That will happen at a later date. And so that's the general background. And Sheriff, if you're ready at this time, I'll turn it over to you for a presentation. And the presentation is the background on the report from the anatomy of a homicide in this particular proposal and how those details will work. Good to see you, Sheriff.
Sheriff McNeil, great to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Manager. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak on what I believe is a vital issue within our community as relates to public safety. Most of you are aware, I hope, of the anatomy of a homicide report that we had built, and from that document and from that research, we've come up with what I'm going to share with you now, which is a summary of the problem and then some idea of how we believe we can go forward. And everything we do in the Leon County Sheriff's Office, I have to kind of digress a moment and say that this includes the entire community. We believe the only way we effectively fight crime is to have every aspect of our community engaged with a plan that gives us some directive, some idea of what direction we're going. And that's what the anatomy of homicide sort of did for us. We believe the Council on the Status of Men and Boys gives us that platform where we can unite as a community around driving down this crime rate, and more specifically, dealing with the number of persons who are murdered in our community on a regular basis. He just handed me this thing, and I'm not. What was that?
It's like a gun, Sheriff.
No, it's not like a gun.
Just aim and fire.
Let's see. Here we go. All right. Summary of our problem. Based on the extraordinary exploration and review of homicides that occurred in Leon County from 2015 to 2020, it was determined that both homicide victims and offenders were overwhelmingly young black males. 15 to 24 was the highest age group for both victims and offenders, followed by persons 25 to 34. 75% of the victims and 65% of the known offenders were African American. 86% of the victims and at least 81% of the offenders were male. The summary of our problem in this respect, 85% of the homicide offenders had been suspended or expelled from school, and 52% had attended alternative, charter, or detention schools. To further illuminate this problem, in a recent analysis published by the Tallahassee Democrat, they indicated that over 2,000 students have been suspended or expelled from Leon County schools between August 11, 2021 and January 24, 2022. I'd like you to keep those numbers in mind. The report recommends, our recommendation is in the Anatomy of a Homicide report, included the design of a working group to unify existing efforts, develop a plan to address the problem. The report further states that to be successful, these steps must be taken collaboratively. And I can't put enough emphasis on the word collaboratively, by the community at large, not solely. And I have said this time and time again, this is not the Leon County Sheriff's Office initiative. This is this entire community's initiative. Proposed solution and structure. And again, we believe that we should have discussions about this structure. If it's something that the city, or county, or others believe should be looked at differently, I'm certainly open to that. But the proposed structure on the status of men and boys is expected to provide a roadmap to reduce homicides and non-fatal shootings in Tallahassee County by bringing all stakeholders and resources to the table to implement a unified operational strategy to both prevent and look at enforcement. The draft charter outlines a structure with 4 functioning components. The first is a leadership council to set direction and contribute resources, as hopefully you will do today. The second is a council staff to manage the work of the council and prescribe, look at case management and the services to be rendered. And then we have an executive steering committee that's accountable for planning, the evaluation, and cross-disciplinary information sharing. Information sharing is vital as we take on this task, comprised of subcommittee chairs and council staff. And lastly, 7 subcommittees, and this, quite honestly, is the work of the council is in the subcommittees. And they will do the bulk of the work looking at the at-risk kids, primarily going back to the chart I gave you initially that speaks to the number of kids who are expelled or in alternative schools, some 2,000 youth. The focus on the action that we're talking about here, the proposed council is a multidisciplinary group that will be charged with the following: unifying existing efforts and moving forward in a coordinated manner, identify and engage at-risk men and boys and their families, provide individual and targeted services, provide support to the areas with the greatest amount, guess I didn't change that one, did I? Provide support to the areas with the greatest amount of violence, address the conditions and behaviors associated with the violence. Next, the expected outcomes. Those expected outcomes include reducing the number of homicides and non-fatal shootings in Tallahassee County, reduce the number of suspensions and expulsions, reduce the number of youth assigned to alternative schools, increase the number of males receiving direct services, and finally, reduce the overall violent crime rate in Tallahassee County. The focus on action. Again, here's where the rubber meets the road. The case managers and the subcommittees will provide individualized services to the individual men and boys according to case management response matrix based on the model from FSU. And that matrix is basically at 5 levels. Priority 1, persons at extreme risk. Priority 2, high risk. 3, moderate risk. 4, low risk. And then lastly, just the aspect of monitoring.
Sheriff, can I stop you there real quick? Who is the FSU Outreach Response Team?
It's based on the FSU response team model. FSU uses a clinical group of experts, counselors who respond to events that take place on their campus. We envision doing the same thing in the community. The evaluation plan. Florida State University's College of Criminology and Criminal Justice will serve as the evaluator of the multi-agency programs and initiatives that are administered through the Council on the Status of Men and Boys. The process evaluation will consider various targeted programs, inputs, implementation, results, and outcomes. The effectiveness of the multi-agency initiatives in reducing violent crime and homicides in Tallahassee County will be described and explained thoroughly during this evaluation process. And lastly, the thing that seems to get the most attention is the fact that there's a cost associated with trying to do something of this magnitude, specifically trying to identify and target specifically those kids and families that we know are at risk, and having processes and programs that specifically tries to meet those needs. There's a cost to doing that, and there's a cost to organizing that, and we believe that cost, quite honestly, is minimal when you consider the fact that one murder or one shooting, it's estimated the cost is $838,000 or $5.1 million. We respond to those calls, and those lives are taken in our community. Commissioner, I hope, Mayor, City Manager, it is my hope that you will certainly join us in our all-in effort to deal with this ongoing problem. I will tell you that I've been in law enforcement for 40 years, and I have not seen the opportunity to make a significant impact like the anatomy of a homicide drew for us. It drew a straight line. When I go back and look at the fact that 85% of the young persons who were expelled are placed in second chance circumstances. 85% of those young persons were involved either being the victim or the perpetrator in the murders in our community. That's a direct correlation, which gives us the opportunity to have some interventions in that space. I yield and would answer any questions you may have.
Excellent, Sheriff. And we're going to take some public comment. Well, we can ask questions now, and then we'll take public comment. And if you obviously can stick around for the discussion, that'd be great as well. I got a couple of, well, we'll go ahead and take questions. Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox.
Good to see you, High Sheriff.
Commissioner?
I am sitting here reading and listening to this, and if I close my eyes, it sounds a lot like what we're doing with Tempo. So I guess my question is this something to marry with that, or something to provide more community support of that program that we're talking about here? Or we're talking about another program like Tempo? Or what are we saying?
Well, I don't know all the specifics of how Tempo works, but my belief is that when I talked about the matrix in terms of the number of students and young people in our community, my belief is, and I may be incorrect, we talked about 4 or 5 levels. I believe that Tempo has an intervention at that bottom level, that level 5, where monitoring is what we do, and then at the next level, we take some actions like getting jobs and that sort of thing. There are 3 other levels that go unaddressed in our community.
Okay, I would, I know Dr. Kimball Thomas is in the room, and at some point in time, I'd like to have his response to that as well, because I didn't know, the leveling. I know that we've determined that there were 7,000 disconnected youth in that same age group. And 1,500 of them have been impacted to the tune of $1.2 million that the city has already spent with the Tempo program. Dr. Thomas has gone out there by himself and brought in more than half of those. And then a staff was built around him to do this. So, and we've had conversations about expanding what Tempo does. So we'll talk more about it, but I'd like for, at some point in time, for Dr. Thomas to talk to us, to give us more information about Tempo, because I've never looked at it as a level, because I thought we were taking all and doing whatever was needed, because we've got caseworkers to determine what the need is. But I'll wait until we get into further discussion.
Let's just get some clarifying questions, and then we still need to take public comment, and then we'll come back for discussion. Right. Commissioner Porter, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much, Sheriff, for being here and for your work on this. I just have one question, which is for the executive director, the part where it says that they're reporting to the mayor and to the county administrator. I'm trying to pull it up now. I have it in my notes. What exactly does it mean that they're reporting to that group of people and reporting to the mayor?
Since we have not all been privy to these discussions, we believe that someone, that executive director has to report to someone, a body or an individual. I'm not sure who that is. Now, initially, the rub was, well, it reports to the sheriff. I don't need it to report to me. Perhaps there's a committee made up of the funding agencies that the executive director reports to. Rather than my trying to answer all the questions relative to how we structure this, I've got some ideas about how it should be, but I certainly don't want this to become the sheriff's office issue so that, some people don't feel. The thing that I'm looking for here is that every entity in this community is connected and engaged in making sure that we follow through on the fidelity of this plan that we put together.
Okay, and just a follow-up question, and it's okay if we don't have this figured out exactly. Does that mean responsible for hiring and firing? Does that mean just relaying information and updates? Or are we not sure yet?
Well, we can do it either way. We've talked about it being much like the CDA, perhaps, where you've got 3 persons that are charged with doing the day-to-day kind of engagement. But again, I've tried to not paint myself in a corner where it becomes, you guys don't feel like you have a vested interest because it's all mine, or the county feel like, and all the other, or the school board. It may very well be, when we talk to Rocky and we go back, they would like to have it. I don't know. I'm not trying to answer all those political questions about all the players. I'm simply trying to get this thing off the ground and running. And we can deal with the makeup of all the leadership of it, I believe, at a later date.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not hung up on that one issue. The main thing that I care about in asking that is that, we are all, as a city commission, as responsible to our constituents and as concerned about this issue as the mayor. And so I want to make sure that whatever it is, that we're able to participate at least in the progress and information that is gleaned from this. So, but I'm not hung up on that one issue. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and Sheriff, I got to tell you to the point as well. We haven't had a chance to talk, and I was a little surprised to see me in the hot seat as well on this commission. So I think that needs to be flushed out. One of the questions that I have is this the model that the county voted on when they approved the appropriations, or do you need to go back to the county with this new model of the oversight committee?
No, this is what they approved. The only thing I've got to go back to the county with is whether or not the city and the other funders will actually come through with the funding.
All right, so so they also approved your council with me as the mayor sitting on this and city committee, or was it, I thought that they took it under the fact that this was going to be the sheriff's council, which in my mind is actually fine, of the sheriff's council, not necessarily this idea of this advisory council where the mayor sits on it and the superintendent and the police chief and everything else. I was just as surprised to see it as my colleagues.
Well, the way this is kind of being teased out from my perspective is that the 5 funding agencies, we can change that, would be the oversight committee that would look at, and that could be your designee. It doesn't have to be you, but your designee. And on an ongoing basis, let's say every 6 months or every 9 months or whatever, we would come together. The executive director would come in and give us a report. What's the progress? How the committee's working? Are they meeting the goals and objectives we've established for them? And that's the vision behind it. But it was never expected that the mayor would sit there, but perhaps designees would sit from again, the 5 funding entities.
Excellent. Okay, shall we hear public comment? Yes. Awesome. Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Clark, walk us through public comment, please.
Mayor, we have 5 speakers. All are here in person, so we won't need to do WebEx. And if we're ready, I'll call the first one.
That'd be great.
Kelly Oddie. As with the earlier portion of our meeting, each speaker has 3 minutes. The next speaker would be Willie Williams.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners, City Manager, I'm pleased to be here. Right off the bat, I want to say that I'm urging you to support this. I think that it's an initiative that's well past its time, and I think that there is a community-wide agreement that something has to happen. The other thing is that I just want to make it really clear that I've always considered myself the president of the Walt McNeil Fan Club, and I believe in his passion and his heart and his intellect in trying to get this done, so I stand solidly in support. He and I have had a chance to talk, so what I'm going to say is not a surprise to him. One of the things that happened after the county commission meeting was when the headline came out that it was the Council on Men and Boys getting $350,000 and the Council on Women and Girls getting $40,000, as you can probably imagine that my phone blew up. And I'm sorry, I didn't even say I'm Kelly Oddie with the Oasis Center for Women and Girls, and I'm the founder of the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls and the Oasis Center for Women and Girls. And so my phone blew up because the names are making people sort of make that comparison. And so what I suggested to the sheriff is that he change the name, because I don't think they're the same thing. I think they have some similarities, but I think they're so dissimilar that there's no reason to invite that kind of conflicting comparison. So I urged him to change the name. The other thing is that I'm disappointed at almost the complete lack of reference to single mothers in the charter for the new council, and I think there's somebody else that's going to talk about that, so I'll let her talk about that. But the role of the women, the single moms in the lives of these youth is incredibly important, and so because of that, I urged him to appoint Oasis and the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls on a seat on the Leadership Council. Not because we're there to derail it or tell anybody what to do, but we're there to actually add that perspective. Oasis has been providing services for single moms for 14 years. Personally, I've been in the community for 27 years working with predominantly single moms and their children, and I know how hard they're working to try and keep their boys off the streets and their girls. And so I believe I have that unique perspective, and so do others in the community. Another thing that the anatomy to the homicide report was troublesome to me because the domestic violence cases were taken out, and so I really urged him to look at how domestic violence actually has a connection to what happens. And minorly, yes, thank you, was to remove the term lovers quarrel from the report. But the big thing that I want to say is that I wholeheartedly support what he is doing and urge you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Next is Willie Williams, and then Jacqueline Steele.
Dr. Williams, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Willie Williams, 4525 Westover Drive, Tallahassee. Mayor, Commission, administrators, thank you for hearing me this morning. Powerful words need not be spoken in majority, but need to be spoken wisely. And I put faces with a lot of the issues that the sheriff pointed out. Last week, I had the opportunity to speak with a local high school football team where one young man stood up after that speaking and resonated with the anger I had as a youth because he had lost his father and his brother to gun violence here in Tallahassee. And then I, in turn, resonated when I had to speak with my own teenage son about why he lost his friend as a teenager to gun violence in Tallahassee last year. But those are so few and far and in between, and they do not outshadow the great things we've done here in Tallahassee. Not at all. Because just this morning, Dr. Kimball, I ran into a youth that was part of TFLA when I was over it. And now, 5 years later, she's not only working at the hotel off of Gaines Street, she's also studying to be a cosmetologist, and her twin is a plumber here in Tallahassee. So these programs work if we work them. And what we have to continue to do is invest in these programs like TFLA, like Omega Lamplighters, and DYG that took 25 black young men to Denver, Colorado in 2015 on a 48-hour bus ride to bring home the All-American City designation. Commissioner Richardson was there. He knows those young men played a majority important role in securing that. And so when we talk about programs like TFLA, like Omega Lamplighters, Kingsmen, programs like Tempo that are making a difference, we understand that they are the vehicles for getting our teenagers and our youth to the next destination of positive trajectory. They are the vehicles. When you look at Tallahassee, almost 300,000 people, or Leon County rather, youth 15 to 24 are 26%. That's nearly 70,000. There's enough work to go around. And we must continue to build these programs and to make sure that they are effective and efficient, transparent in what they're doing, and then continue to capacity build. Those are the things I want to share with you, and I hope that we understand that there's a difference between programming like TFLA, Tempo, Lamplighters, and the Commission on the Status of Boys and Men. These programs are vehicles. That commission is the highway. That commission will connect these programs, will go and explore issues, not only on violence, but health and every other important issue impacting men and boys. We need this commission. What we cannot do is point out a community or point out a group and say they are the issue and not intentionally put forth the resources and the solutions to address that problem. We will not do that. And so I ask your attention to this matter, and I thank you. I thank you for first and most, in a time where people are being important, I thank you for being significant and making a difference and leaving footprints in the sand for the work that we need to do here in Tallahassee. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Clerk.
Next speaker is Jacqueline Steele, and then Stanley Sims.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Jacqueline Steele, 2250 Bluff Oak Way, Tallahassee, Florida, 32311. Full address. My name is Jacqueline Steele. I'm a lifelong resident. I am newly to Tallahassee. I have been a lifelong Leon County resident for quite some time. So most importantly, though, I am a mother of 10 wonderful children, 5 of whom are men and boys, and I say that because they're ages 20 through 4. So I'm here today to speak in support of the Commission on the Status of Men and Boys. And I understand when I use this word, however, that's going to negate everything I said. So I'm going to say it again. I am here in support of the Commission on the Status of Men and Boys, but I'd like to reiterate that we need also to add our moms to that. At a point in time, I was not Jacqueline Colson Steele, I was Jacqueline Colson. I was a single mom of 4. And at that time, I had the resources and I had the support system to make sure that my boys did not make it into statistics. However, my son, my oldest son, did make it into a statistic. He was expelled from Leon County schools. And here I am sitting there, I'm this well-educated mom, from a well-educated family, and my child has been expelled. And I had all the resources that I could, and he says, Mom, I'm not gonna let you down, I'm gonna go finish school. And that he did, and he was able to be valedictorian of his class at the alternative school. It was only one, and he told the rest of them, he said, I messed up. I'm here, but I finished what I started. And I want to let you know that with this Commission on the Status of Men and Boys, it is very important that we look at the moms because they have to have the resources. And we can have these programs, and like Sheriff McNeil said, there are steps, just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We got to look at that bottom portion, and then we got to keep moving on up. And one of the things I wanted to pull out from the sheriff's report very quickly is that 76% of those offenders reported living in single-parent families. In Leon County, 90% of those families are headed by single women.
You're at
So
about
these
30
moms.
seconds.
Okay, so therefore, I just want to say it's my recommendation that if you accept this, that there has to be some programming for women so that the sheriff can have those outcomes that he needs. Thank you very much for your time. I do
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Our next speaker, Mr. Clerk.
Stanley Sims, and then Lynn Jones.
Your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Stanley Sims. I'm at 1320 Avondale Way. Today, I officially filed to upseat Kelly Otter to be the president of the Sheriff Walt McNeil fan. We and Walt go back a long while, so I'm going to contest Kelly. And this is going to be a hard-fought race. I've known the sheriff in multiple ways in this community. Tonight, I'm going to talk about the one when I was an inmate. I was also a reentry facilitator while I was in prison. So I don't speak from data. I don't speak from projects or report. I speak personally. I speak personally because I have 2 black sons. And I would not know my daddy, Sheriff, if he walked in this door. I don't fault my mama because I'm an ex-felon. Because Commissioner Richardson, you know my mama. And you don't lie on your mama. But there's a cohort here that's being missed that is also important. But before I go to that point, I don't want to take anything about single mothers because I've been there. But we as men have got to catch up. The work of Mr. Kingsman, the work of Mr. Williams has not been elevated to the fact of the work of Miss Judy. And that ain't jealousy, baby, I'm just reality. And our men need a platform to catch up with the ladies. So this ain't no battle against the women. We trying to catch up with y'all. And the data in this report, I admit it is not complete.
You're at about 30 seconds.
But it got the ball rolling. Go to my website page, vote Stanley Sims, Chef McNeil, president.com.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please, Mr. Clerk.
Next is Lynn Jones, and then followed by Whitfield Leland.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Lynn Jones, 3211 Notre Dame Street, Tallahassee, Florida. Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner, and Manager for allowing me to speak this evening. I have most respect for Sheriff McNeil and all who are helping to support the youth in our county. I'm a professional educator of 36 years. Currently, I'm a teacher at the Leon County Regional Juvenile Detention Center. The center is a transition center, which means we get students from everywhere, not just Leon County. We've gotten students from Washington, D.C. I teach the language arts, reading. I teach the science. I do support for the ESC students there, for the 504 students, and the ESOL students who come through the center. I also taught at Joanne Bridges Academy in Greenville, which is a 24/7 female facility. I support the initiative that's being put forth by Sheriff McNeil and his team. Don't give up on the youth because they feel that you have. Even though they are in detention, they still need our support. And some of the students are headed back to our community and to our schools here in Leon County. They told me they need more male role models. They need someone to come out there and talk to them about the right thing to do. They need some support. They need someone to come and talk to them about career choices because they already know they're making poor choices, so they want your support. They need support for their families, ongoing support. I'm sure they're getting support at the schools, they're getting support from many different places, but it seems like the support stops once they get in detention. They feel like no one cares about them anymore. Please provide the appropriate funding to support this initiative. Leon County Schools supports through providing the teachers for education. So that's what I do there. and I do the best I can. Sometimes it's really tough because many of the students have been out of school for 2 years, and they come back and say, Ms. Jones, I don't go to school. I really don't want to be here. And they said it's not a school, and we know it's not really a school because it's a transition center. So they are correct.
You're right at your 3 minutes.
So, again, we are asking you to please support the students in the initiative for the students who are at the transition center in Leon County. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Whitfield Leland. And Mayor, at this time, that's the last speaker I have on the item unless someone comes up to me during these 3 minutes.
Excellent. Your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Good afternoon, Whitfield Leland, 754 West 7th Avenue. Just like everybody else, I stand up here to support the initiative. I don't want, and I said this at the county commission meeting, I don't want us to get this program mixed up with anything we have. And this is the reason why. I see Mr. Boatman, Mr. Willie, Royal, all of them have great programs. Mr. Kimball, they doing great things. But we still have killings and murders. Even with all the success that they do, it's still a gap. So, and I honestly believe with everything that I see, all the people that I talk to inside the 304, because that's where, my office is at, that's where I reside and do most of my work. This initiative is going to bridge the gap. At the county meeting, they was having discussion of who reports and where the power. At the end of the day, those people out there that are committing those crimes, they don't give a damn that y'all got the power. We shouldn't care at this point if we're making an initiative and bridging the gap, who's in control if we are working together as a team. At the end of the day, I'm with Chef McNeil. Everybody's gonna have to come on board. Y'all gonna have to put y'all agendas to the side. It ain't big brother, little brother. It ain't big brother. It can't be none of that. We still losing lives. At the end of the day, TPD stretched. Like to be honest, yeah, I am outspoken on certain issues, but they are stretched. Then I ride at night, and every time I turn a corner, it's the police got to be dealing with an issue. They're stretched thin. Let's give everybody some help. Let's actually put people in positions that's where their strength at. Everybody's strength ain't on the street to go talk to a youngster. Even if you got a degree and done been in the best college, you can't connect to him. Let's put the right people in places. Let's support this initiative. And me personally, I think that every entity, the county, the city, TPD, the sheriff, and the school board should match what the county did, and every entity should put $350,000 apiece. That's what I take. Support.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please.
No additional speakers on this item.
All right, we're going to enter into commission discussion. I'm going to kick it off first and foremost. And where's the sheriff? Oh, Sheriff McNeil, thanks again for bringing this to our attention. A couple things in particular. Number one, I do agree with the speakers that we should not try to replace what we have going on, but complement. And that is my intentions as well. Tempo is a fantastic program. FLA is a fantastic program as well, TFLA. We've got Kingsman Club that's represented here as well. We've got a lot of great organizations that are doing amazing things, Lamplighters, Distinguished Young Gentlemen. We need to complement what is going on moving forward. You have my unwavering support for a commitment of $140,000, absolutely. There's a lot of meat that needs to go on the program. We're going to figure it out. But I want you to know that you have my support. I will make the change, though, that I don't think that the mayor should be the point person, simply because in a council management form of government, you should have the city manager, as you have the superintendent, as you have the county administrator, with the full resources of the government at the table but you have my unwavering support moving forward. I will say that I was a little surprised at the motion at the county. I thought for sure that they would rise to the occasion to match the city's commitment of $140,000, and I would like to make that challenge to the county that they do step up to the plate to $140,000 seed money. I love the comments that were made by Kelly Oddie and some of the other strong women that testified this evening as well. That is a voice that needs to be formally recognized at the table. I know all of this will be taken into consideration. At the end of the day, and I'm going to make the motion for option number 1, which gives the financial commitment of $140,000 as seed money from the City of Tallahassee, with the understanding, and the proper language is included in the motion that is before us, that we will work together. We will be a strong community partner to be able to move this forward. However, colleagues, the one amendment that I will make in there is that, remember, in the agenda item as it was presented, as Commissioner Porter pointed out, it states the mayor of the City of Tallahassee would be part of the response team, and it's more appropriate for the city manager, I believe, to serve in that capacity. But I don't think we're ratifying that tonight. That's part of what will be discussed moving forward. So the motion is made for the recommended action of option number 1.
Second.
Properly seconded by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. We'll go Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Williams-Cox, Commissioner Porter, Commissioner Matley. We'll make sure everybody's got plenty of time to speak.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And certainly, I think we all recognize that this is a tremendous issue in our community right now. It's not the first time. This has been an issue that has plagued, unfortunately, our community for a long time. I was talking to my daughter the other night about the program with the Urban League, and for some reason I cannot bring the name of that program back to mind, but it goes back even that far. We had our gun violence council that did a lot of the same or similar work that the sheriff has brought forward in the homicide, the anatomy of a homicide. So this issue has been around for a long time. It's not new, but when even one life is lost, it's one life lost too many, especially when it's tragically happening the way that it is, and especially among young black men. I don't have a son, but I got 2 daughters that I certainly would like for them to marry a man who looks like their dad. I'm not ashamed of that. But it is what it is. And so we've got to address the issue. And we all, as the sheriff said, we've all got to work together as a team. I don't see where the business community has been included, Sheriff, and they have a stake in this as well, a tremendous stake. So they need to be brought to the table, I think. I guess, and Sheriff, I've got a couple of questions that I wanted to ask, because I'm trying to understand if, first of all, are the students that you're going to be pinpointing or targeting, are those the 2,000 students that have been suspended and expelled? I mean, how will the students be identified that will be worked with? Would it come from that population, or?
Mr. Commissioner, there will be a number of avenues in which we identify the most at-risk youth. Got to be specific geographically, so we'll look at 32304 as a geographic area that has problems. We'll look at, as Kelly Ott talked about, we'll look at domestic violence situations. We already do that. We'll enhance that in terms of identifying who the youth are. But I think the most robust aspect of this, in terms of our being able to have interventions and interdictions at an early age, is through our school system. It is exactly the point where we have to make the interventions. The third grade reading level will also be a component of what we try to deal with. So we're talking about moving the entire spectrum of youth in our community who are at risk, and these subcommittees divided into 7 disciplines. Each one of those disciplines will be focused on those youth that have those modalities or problem areas, and we'll then work with those kids specifically. So it's a broader, I can't impress upon you, this is the most holistic approach to dealing with this problem that we've ever had. And we start carving out little pieces of it. We're talking about the entire child we're trying to look at from the point they enter school. And that's the key point for us as they enter school. And so we'll have the 2,000 that the Democrat identified. We'll have kids that are coming from our detention facilities. We'll have kids that are coming from situations where they've been, I'm working also with Boys and Girls Town. All the lamplighters and all the groups that are already working with kids, we're going to coalesce around all those persons and their names and try to drill down. And this is very specific. We're talking about using the health care model. We're talking about identifying the child, what his or her issues are, then try to make sure we do doses. One of the things that Commissioner Jimbo Jackson shared with me, which is that before we expel a child from school, we have something in excess of 20 opportunities to have interventions. You probably know that as a school person yourself. It's in those spaces that we want to bring in organizations like these to start dealing with these problems in a healthcare kind of environment, if that's helpful to your question.
Okay. And so the other thing that I'm trying to understand, because I'm liking the Commission on the Status of Men and Boys to the Children's Services Council, and I've recently had the opportunity to hear Sika present in a couple of different venues, and what I gather from her and what the role of the CSC will be is coalescing groups like that, but them providing funding. They won't do the programming. Will the Commission on the Status of Men and Boys do the programming, or will it serve a similar role as the CSC to be sort of the convener and identify the sources of funding? Because I've heard some people say support this program. I've heard some people say support this initiative. And so I'm trying to understand, is it going to be a program and service provider, or exactly how will that work?
This initiative will focus on making sure that all of those providers that are already receiving funds in our community are utilizing that same system we talked about, that matrix that we laid out.
Okay.
And we hope to, at some point, and that's why I said to the county commission, we will be a direct service delivery in the community. What we hope to do is qualify for children's services dollars ourselves, and that's why I believe at some point in time we will not be continuously asking the city and the county to do this through grants and through the Children's Services Council. If we stand this up as robust as I believe we can, we'll have some significant impacts. The key aspect of this, quite honestly, is with our school system.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with this. Would it be because I didn't know if these dollars that you're asking for now would be recurring dollars on an annual basis, or if you would be looking at other funding. And what came to mind was the Children's Services Council. And that's why I was asking about the programming, because the CSC will actually fund programming. But I don't know if it will fund the council as you laid it out with the structure, the vertical structure. I don't know if they will fund that, but they will fund the programs possibly through lamplighters or distinguished young gentlemen or some of the other intervention programs that we've already got out there. But I don't know that they would fund the structure of the Commission on the Status of Men and Boys.
Correct. We believe that we will get grants.
Okay.
We will absolutely go out for grants, but we do think there are some aspects of the delivery system that we'll set up that will qualify for children's services dollars.
Okay. Okay. And I guess the thing that struck me, and Sheriff, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I looked at your structure, it looked kind of bureaucratic to me. And I guess that's maybe what you need in order to get this off the ground and to, I mean, is that the case? Will the commission be a bureaucratic type? Because you've got, you know, starting at the top with the, I forgot what you're calling it, with the council, with the mayor and the other officials, and then you've got staffing, and then you've got the subcommittees. That it just struck me as being very bureaucratic when I looked at.
Well, the subcommittees are where the work takes place.
Okay.
That is the work that will take place in terms of trying to address the kids' needs in our community. The step above that, the council itself will be engaged in making sure that those subcommittees are actually getting the work done. They'll come in and evaluate, did you actually do what you promised that you would do on a regular basis, monitoring to see. And that's one of the things that's missing in our community is measuring the output.
Right.
And then the outcomes. Are we actually receiving the kind of services that we're paying for? And in my estimation, that's really lacking in our community. So we set that up intentionally. Now, at the point where, and this is getting way down the line, at the point where we're not being funded anymore by the executive council, we don't need that executive. But to get this off and running, I've got to have all you guys believing that you have a vested interest in seeing what's taking place. So we'll come back in about every 6 months, 9 months, and give you the 5 funders an idea of how well we're doing. And at some point, we will wean ourselves, as I said to the county, we hope to wean ourselves off of the monies coming from the city and the county.
Okay. And then lastly, one of the things that struck me that Sika said in her presentation was that, you know, they will have metrics to determine the effectiveness and efficiency of a program that's actually providing services. And if that program isn't meeting those metrics, she said, you know, I'm sorry, but they'll have to go. Would that be your same stance and position?
That's our model. We will do that through FSU. We've got an agreement with FSU. And I think I said that they're the evaluating component for us, saying whether or not those entities are actually meeting those expected goals and objectives.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, that answers my questions. Thank you, Sheriff.
Excellent. Mayor Pro Tem, you are right on point. That's why we all worked hard, most of us, to pass the Children's Services Council, because we see that needed element here in the community. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mayor. And I second the motion because I am in favor of, but I still need clarification on this program in tempo. So Deputy City Manager, Dr. Thomas, and you all have had an opportunity to see the proposal. I just need to I'm a linear thinker. I need to see what we're talking about.
Deputy Manager Barber.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioner, in fact, I know you've asked Cynthia a direct question. I think it probably would be helpful, too, for everyone's benefit. We've included some material in the agenda item in terms of what Tempo does, how it's organized, and some of the achievements it's accomplished. So I think we could express that in just a couple minutes. Deputy City Manager Barber can do an excellent job, and I think that helps in the conversation in terms of outcomes and target audience, if you would indulge us to also share that.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mayor and Commissioners, I'm going to take this off. First time in 2 years I've had it off in here. If I could, please, to the points that the sheriff made, it was back in 2017 when we also recognized and reported before the commission in this very room what we called at that time the anatomy of murders, because there was concern about murders. You might recall there was a period where there was multiple murders in like a 36-hour window, and we talked about how we could address that, because generally the public was saying that they were afraid, I can't walk out the door, I can't go to the mall, I can't go to visit my mom. And so we wanted the public to understand what was really behind the murders that we were seeing. We don't ever like to see any murder, but we certainly wanted to understand there was an age group that was involved, there was a nexus that was typically related to drug use, and then there were a number of underlying issues that impacted that. So we sought out a number of ideas and programs that we could implement that addressed As the sheriff has said, it's a whole solution, not one law enforcement agency. Therefore, we formed the Public Safety Collective, not simply law enforcement. So you and the former commissioners invested in the NPSI program, which is a neighborhood public safety initiative that makes sure no matter what we're doing from where we sit, but those that live in the communities with these young people and who are most involved in their lives have the resources that they need. So you invested in those communities. The sheriff mentioned in his presentation the need to involve those direct communities. So you've done that by basically using those statistics, determining where these things occur, and then investing through CRA and through city resources back into those areas. Tempo was one of those programs because what we realized is that, again, you're looking at that age group. What could we do to help influence some positivity in that age group and maybe redirect some young people? Because a lot of the young people, as you know, in the Tempo program had already been involved with the criminal justice system. And we had a population of about 7,000, and we've engaged about 1,700 of them, have re-engaged about 1,700 of them. And I wanted to share just really quickly what you really asked me for. You know, I always give a little extra. So I wanted to give you some information on the success that we've had in the program. In terms of the investment over the last 5 years, you've invested $4.3 million in the re-engaging the youth through the Tempo program. And then you've also approved a $1.3 million annual budget. And we've, again, engaged 1,700 youth in our Tempo program, over 1,000 in the TIFLA program. Even through the pandemic, we were able to maintain the TIFLA program, which is our summer youth program, because we felt it was important, because the needs of those young people remained and even were exacerbated during the pandemic because of the loss of income for families and other things. We have over 110 participants that have been enrolled in technical schools and higher education, including Lively, TCC, FAMU, and FSU. Over 300 who have connected. We've connected with employment, and 70 who have graduated through our Tempo program with their GEDs. And one of the things that we've learned in this program, we may have an initial interaction with a single person in the family, but we've also then been able to engage perhaps a spouse, a child, and in some cases, a parent. We also, because we have caseworkers in the program, we've been able to identify that there are other things that hamper them from being able to go back and get a GED or to further their education or get full employment. So we've helped with housing needs. We've made referrals to other type services that they may have had. The team initiative, which you also led the charge on, is addressing the mental health crisis that many of these families may have been impacted by. And so we've seen this generational, we've not just changing one person's life, but if you look at some of the graduation photos and you see we take a little period of time where they engage with their families, and you see the proud parents, the proud siblings, and then the little child that's holding their parent's hand who just received their GED. So we're seeing that generational change that we're all striving to implement, and then addressing our housing needs through the investment of millions of dollars, multi-millions of dollars in housing, because again, trying to deal with the underlying issues, the 100 homes that you provided funding for the facade grants. Some might argue, why would you do that? Because if you can create a neighborhood where neighbors can sit out on their porches, take pride in their neighborhoods, say to someone, when you're thinking of setting up a criminal element in our neighborhood, that's not accepted. We pay attention here, we're engaged and we're involved, and so you have to find somewhere else to do that. And then investing in those young people, and then building infrastructure that connects those houses with the facade grants through a linear park back to the junction, so those neighborhoods take advantage of some of the infrastructure to FAMU Way that you've also invested in. So I just wanted to share with you some of what you've done and what you are doing. Yes, there is still quite a bit of work to do. We've partnered with Goodwill, as you know. The state of Florida has provided funding that also a number of young people have been able to go back and receive certification. I don't know if I have those numbers in front of me, but certification in special CDLs, welding, and other kinds of jobs too. And then also the city has employed Tempo youth, and we employed someone who, for the first time, had lived in his own apartment had no experience in managing his own money. We have a financial management program that we run through the TIFLA program. We have someone who had on staff who had been a banker before. And so for the first time, he could invite his brother, because he got hired in the utilities, invited his brother to his home. And because he was on track, his brother was really, really proud of the work that he had done, and they had bridged their relationship. So it's more than just the GED program. I wanted to make sure you understood, and I feel that you definitely do, but I just wanted to say that so that you do and that the public understands. It's broader than a monitoring program. It is an action-oriented program with an outcome, an expected outcome of helping to make everybody in our community a productive member of our community and a contributor.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager. Now, Dr. Thomas, I know you've moved up front. I know you got more to share, because I know you've been out there. So if you want to share something, I wanted to give you an opportunity to share. Or are you just there for reinforcement?
Mayor, Commissioners, I just want to thank you again for your support of Tempo since this program started in 2017. I just want to kind of update, as Ms. Deputy City Manager Bob talked about, the program design is for those 16 to 24-year-olds who are in need of education, employment, and workforce training opportunities. You heard the numbers she's gave. We're very proud of those in this 5-year time period. I just want you to know, too, from the legislative appropriations of last legislation, that we have 72 students who are currently enrolled at Lively and TCC in those areas that she mentioned: aviation, maintenance, mechanics, CDLs, welding, plumbing, and 26 of those are males that 5 of them are graduating this semester in their program to get licensure and certification. Thank you again for the continued support, and say to the public, let's pick up the tempo.
Thank you. And as I understand, we're on track to get some additional funding from the legislature this year. So I wanted to, I saw you back there, Christian. I wanted to have that said publicly, what the city has been doing, because we've been challenged to step up with $70,000. Well, I'm here to say we've been spending a lot of your tax dollars to try to fix this problem already. And so, and with great success. It's a homegrown program that has great success. And Sheriff, you know, we've talked briefly about expanding that. And so I would hope that with this initiative and what is already going on, we would be expanding what we're already doing to encompass and include these other items. And I want to encourage the county to get on board. We've spent millions, you know, so 70,000 that's great. That's a great start. But we need more, because these children, these individuals belong to all of us, and we've got to do what we need to do it. So as Dr. Thomas said, pick up the tempo, county, and let's get some more money to help make sure we fix this problem. Now, Mr. City Manager, I know the option says to reserve up to $140,000. That's $70,000 from the city and $70,000 from, just one?
140 from the city.
140 from the city. All right, I think, you know where I'm going. It was asked for 2 city entities to provide that, so that's how it came to 140.
Yes, ma'am. That would all be the same city money.
It's from the same city
Yes,
money.
ma'am.
And that's my other point. You know, the difference between the chicken and the pig when it comes to who's giving up what to make breakfast. So the city has given up a lot to make sure that these programs are working. And we're asked to now hit the pot twice, while someone else has only hit it once. But they're asking us to step up. So I'm asking them to step up. Go ahead and send that $70,000 over here to join this $140,000 as we continue to work together to build this entity to help our children. It's time to stop talking about it, and it's time to be about it.
Be about it.
Be about it. Let's get this done before we lose any more of our children. So I just rise to say to the county, send the $70,000 on over here. We'll put it with ours, and we'll get this thing on the road. Because like the sheriff said, let's get to work. Let's quit talking and let's get to work. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem on point, because I still have Commissioner Porter and Commissioner Matlow in queue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I just wanted to express my support for Dr. Thomas and what he's done.
Yep.
If you all recall, Dr. Thomas started this as a one-man mission. He was out on the streets when he was walking neighborhoods by himself, unprotected, reaching out to these young people and getting them involved, and didn't have a whole lot of support, even from the city at the time. But as the program grew and we saw the success, his support began to grow, at least internally. And you've heard, as Commissioner Williams-Cox has mentioned, the funding that we've put into Tempo, and we see the success that it has achieved. But I assume, Sheriff, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that Tempo would be one of those programs that provides the services. Is that how you envision Tempo's role in all of this as well?
Commissioner, I've had at least 2 conversations with Kimball, and I've said to him, and I don't draw back from what I said to him then, that his knowledge and his background, he is a central part of what we're trying to put together. The Tempo piece is central to our being successful. Not only that, but his gray matter and his understanding of these issues is central to what we're trying to go as well. And I've indicated to him that hopefully he will take a leadership role as we move forward.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff.
Can't remember if I have Commissioner Matlow and Commissioner Porter, Commissioner Porter, Commissioner Matlow. So Commissioner Porter.
Okay, thank you. Very, very briefly, do you have an idea, Mr. Sheriff, of, and this can be a follow-up discussion because I know we've spent a lot of time on this, you know, including single moms and women. I'm glad that that was brought up. When I first read it, you know, in the part that says the subcommittee that talks about family, kind of that's where I thought that would fall into. I was wondering if you had a response to some of that and what you're planning.
Commissioner, and that's the problem with my trying to put something together. I cannot remember all the details, but that's the place where we talked about families are inclusive of moms and dads and single-family households and all of that. It was never meant to indicate that we weren't including. I was brought up by a single mom myself, and I understand more than anybody what rigors a mother goes through. So that was always contemplated in what we were putting together.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Commissioner Matlow?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, just thank you, Sheriff, for bringing this forward. I know you've said it's not about you, it's about the entire community and all the entities coming together. But I do think you're in a position where you're uniquely qualified to bring the community together to really address one of the biggest issues we're facing. I think all of us hear about it probably on a daily basis, and we all want to lean in and really figure out how we address the gun violence level, how we address our poverty level, all of these things. I think everybody realizes they're at unacceptable levels, and we need to move forward. So I don't think the proposal takes away from any of the great work the city does, that Tempo is doing. We every time they present, we know each individual life you impact, that's a life that can be rescued or can be put onto a more positive trajectory. And we see that with programs like Mr. Boatman and Mr. Williams and all the men who are out there working every day. But none of that has changed the fact that we're a growing city and our challenges are growing as well. And we need to really put the gas pedal down and expand some of the things we're doing that we know work so we can grow those, but also just take a more holistic approach working together with the schools and the county, the sheriff and the city. So I don't want to take away from all the great things everybody is already doing, but I do understand the urgency of where we are now and what our community expects and wants to see us do in response. So I thought this proposal while I recognize all the individual aspects of how it gets created will still be worked out, and it's hard to just draw it up all by yourself and also be collaborative. So I do appreciate, you got to start somewhere, and we got to put our money where our mouth is if we really want to address some of the issues in the program. I also wanted to echo single mothers. I was raised by a single mother of 4 kids, and I saw all the work she did. I saw the violence in my neighborhood and the work she did to secure us resources. And I'll also give a shout out to the city, one of my first employers at Dade Street Community Center, that gave me an opportunity when I may not have. So I think all of those voices are important as we move forward the conversation. But I'm all in. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, just one last thing. It's a perfect segue to Commissioner Matlow's comments. The one thing we didn't talk about is all the youth programming that we do at our community centers. And we have young people involved in those programs, so that too is a source that, the city funds where we're trying to intercede with youth in our community. And hopefully we can bring those resources to bear as well as we build this plan around supporting men and boys in our community. So I just wanted to make that comment as well.
I have made the motion for option number 1, which is the recommended action to reserve up to $140,000 for startup funding for the sheriff's proposal. It has been properly seconded by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. I join Commissioner Williams-Cox in challenging the county to contribute not $70,000, but to come to the same line of $140,000 as the city of Tallahassee. We fully support your proposal. All those in favor of the motion on the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. We are on item number 13.03. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This item seeks your approval for the purchase of maintenance and lease hardware agreements associated with the city's technology. In particular, these agreements are for our Microsoft and Oracle software applications. They provide upgrades as we need them, technical support, and security patches for all of the systems supported by Microsoft and Oracle. Tim Davis is our Chief Information Officer. He's here to answer any questions you may have on this item.
Are there any questions for Mr. Davis?
Are there any speakers?
Do we have any speakers on this item? Mr. Cook?
No, sir, we do not.
Move it,
All
move
right.
staff recommendation.
There is a motion by Commissioner Williams-Cox to accept staff recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Commissioner Porter. Any questions, any comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The mayor votes in the affirmative. The motion carries 5-0. Next item. Mr. City Manager.
Next item, 13.04, seeks your approval of Resolution 22-R-04, which authorizes the purchase of natural gas from the Southeast Energy Authority. I'd like to invite David Ging, our Wholesale Energy and Fuels Administrator, forward. I'd like him to explain it very briefly. But in a nutshell, this is a contract that results in a discount for the purchase of natural gas. We estimate those annual savings to exceed or to be about or exceed $600,000 per year. This kind of contract is available to us because of our organization as a municipal utility. And so, David, would you mind just giving us a thumbnail sketch of how this contract works, please?
Okay. Well, thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity. This is one of the ways we manage our gas supply. So we have a hedge program and we have the prepaid gas agreement.
Get a little closer to the mic, David. Or yeah, you can take that off.
So this program allows us to save approximately $4 to $5 million a year in our fuel expenses. We've been doing this since 2006. The biggest advantage of this program is the flexibility. It allows us to pivot as the city's long-range utility planning changes over time, that we can either modify our participation in the program or we can exit our participation in the program. We can convert purchased power agreements, whether they be renewable or others, into these agreements and continue to receive the discounts. So it's been very successful since we started in 2006, and we're here to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? Do we have any speakers, Mr. Cook?
No speakers?
No speakers. Is there a motion? Commissioner Williams-Cox?
Question, you said $4 to $5 million a year is saved?
Yes.
Okay.
For clarity, Commissioner, we have other agreements that are in place. With the addition of this agreement,
Okay.
We would recognize approximately $4 to $5 million total in discounts because of these kind of agreements.
Okay. Move staff recommendation.
There is a motion by
Second.
Commissioner Williams-Cox to accept staff recommendation on option number 1, seconded by Commissioner Porter. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously, 5-0. Mr. City Manager, item number 13.05, our legislative update.
Thank you, sir. This is the last item in the policy formation. We are now past the halfway point in our legislative session.
Okay.
You received an update at your last meeting in terms of relevant bills and details, and so we're offering this again tonight as an update on the progress of our state legislature.
Yes, sir, and Mayor and Commissioners, or Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners, thank you. So we're in the sixth week of 9-week session, and both the House and the Senate will by tonight have passed their budgets into conference. Actual conference will begin in about 2 weeks. Right now, we're optimistic that tempo is funded in both, and it will prevail. And as you heard Dr. Thomas say earlier, that's 72 additional participants at the amount of $250,000. So that's a big win, and that's what we're focused on. The item provides an update on all the bills, and we're here to receive any comment.
Do we have any speakers, Mr. Cook?
No, sir.
No speakers. Are there any questions, comments from the commissioners? Christian, I would like to ask, could you give us an update on any of the bills that will impact home rule and continue chipping away at our home rule authority?
Yes, sir. So an overview of that is provided in the item, and what I will share is probably there's been some successes in terms of the league and all of us engaging together in either making the bills such that the league now supports them. Right. One that we're neutral on as a league, and certainly as a city right now, is the bill that would allow any 15% impact of revenues of any business based on the ordinances, laws that a city would pass or a county would pass. That now is in a neutral support posture, essentially because there are now exemptions and ways that cities can resolve any conflicts that hopefully we'll be able to live with, but we're still neutral there. So that'd probably be and then it's essentially there's some pushing up the limits of sovereign immunity. There's a whole host that, the active consideration and engagement is occurring on. Essentially right now, though, what we're hearing is that there aren't a lot of differences between the president and the speaker and the governor on some of those issues, and they will be resolving any over the next few weeks, but we stay engaged as we can.
Where are we with pay raises for state employees, across the board pay raises?
Right now, there's no pay raise across the board contemplated.
Inflation at 7%, and there's no across the board pay raises for our hardworking state government employees.
Okay. Commissioner,
yes, sir.
Could I add to that?
All right.
It's a great point in question. And what we know is there are no across-the-board pay raises. We saw that for the first time last year. It was good. I think there's some selective pay raises by agency, targeted, but it's very targeted in nature. So nothing like what we saw last year. Certainly, we're tracking that because that impacts our community.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, the motion on the table is simply to accept the report. Is there, by the way, do we have any public comment? Have you called for public comment?
Yeah, there was.
Excellent. Okay.
So move.
Motion's been made by by Commissioner Williams-Cox, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. See no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Passes unanimously. Do we have any other business to come before the commission tonight?
No, sir. That's the extent of policy.
Okay, we do have one update, a very formal update that I'm going to put her on the spot, but I would love for Dr. Connie Evans to come provide an update on the Dr. Charles Evans Park dedication and the park itself. And how are we doing? Dr. Evans, good to see you.
Connie, I didn't realize that was you.
I brought lots of things for you. Most people are talking about things that they want from you. I'm not talking about anything that we want from you, but I'm bringing you a very important update. And the things that I'm bringing, I would like to be entered in the record.
Yes, ma'am.
I was told that if I gave you some things that you could reflect them, is on the screen, is that true?
Right.
We have assistants coming down.
Okay.
If you look on the podium next
right
to you
there.
under the white arm, if you'll place it there and we can
Right
see
here?
it. Yes, ma'am.
That's it.
You'll see the screen to your left.
Yeah, there it is.
There you go.
Great, great. Thank you.
Straighten it up, straighten it up.
First of all, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I bring you greetings from the Evans family that you have been so wonderful to. I know you get a lot of static from people. I call you sometimes too with different items. But I'm here this evening to congratulate you, Commissioner, I'll start here, Porter, Commissioner Williams-Cox, Jeremy, Curtis.
Uh-oh. Thank you, Connie.
I want to tell you how proud I am, and my family is, that you thought out of the box. You had the opportunity when my neighborhood association did not want to change the name of Chapman Pond to Charles Evans Pond. You thought outside of the box. You did not consider it robbery to remove the name of a person that was not in the best interest of civil rights and to put my husband's name for that. I want to thank you personally. And I also want to tell you that your actions was not only noted here in Tallahassee, but it went national. I have here the congressional record, and it says that the City Commission of Tallahassee here, you're to be commended for renaming that pond, Dr. Charles Evans Pond, on Martin Luther King's birthday celebration day. You all were awesome. I'm bringing this because I want it to be a part of the record. It's history for us, Black history, and I want it to be a part of your record and your term. Also, I want to just very briefly tell you how appreciative I am that you all gave me the leeway to meet with your staff, and they were wonderful as always, to produce this program. It's the renaming and dedication ceremony for the pond. Is that up there? Right there. Okay. I do want that to be a part of the record. Okay, and I can show you, let me just tell you very briefly, the first photo there is my husband as he finished pilot school in Pensacola. The middle one there is a rally that we had at the Capitol, and you know we had many. The far right there, that house is the house, the Franklin Boulevard, the Franklin Building in historic Frenchtown that you all helped and allowed us to move with city funds. It's now the home of the NAACP. Kudos. The house here, or the building there, is the School of Business and Industry where he worked so many years. And again, him speaking someplace. And this is how we remember him. And president of NAACP. I'm bringing this to you because it's such a wonderful document. And And I'm not just saying that. You all know how we are. There are those that are regular, ordinary people. You all are extraordinary. And because you're extraordinary, we expect more of you. And you gave, so you need to know your investment, what you gave on. Here is the program that we had where the mayor, most of you came. I think, Jeremy, you had another commitment, but everybody else, thank you so much. What's most important is that it gave a history on why you all appointed, renamed the pond in his honor. It's a 2-page history, and it includes Charles's accomplishments and a lot of instances, especially on the back. We have the City of Tallahassee, where we partnered to do things together. That's basically all I'm here for, to thank you all, to tell you that this year, 2022, thank you so much as a commission for thinking outside the box. Usually, people will send you letters and notes and things. I could not sit on it. I had to come and tell you in person. Thank you, each and every one of you.
Thank you. And congratulations on your new grandbaby, too. We appreciate it. Colleagues, while we're here, if we can go ahead and take advantage of the time. I know Mr. Ryan is here to speak on unagended items. I say we go ahead and give those individuals. How many unagended item speakers do we have, Mr. Clerk?
We have Mr. Ryan.
Okay, Mr. Ryan, let's go ahead and maximize your time so you don't have to wait till after the public hearing to speak. And we still will have time, colleagues, to do the sharing of ideas leading up to the public hearing at 6. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Cook, and commissioners. Let's see, unagenda items. This is, I'm from the Tallahassee Sewage and Wecolla Basin Advocacy Group. And this is about an item that I have been asking for the commission to consider as a new policy, the sewage spillage policy. And since we don't have one yet, I am before you to talk about the most recent sewage spill that we had, 190,000 gallons. The reasons for the spill, we're still working with the department to understand what the reasons were. It occurred in the McGinnis Arm. I've been out there several times, most recently today, doing some of our own water quality testing. Understand the staff is also continuing with water quality testing. And notice of the spill, we've talked several times about putting into a spill policy, news releases going out to the media. We have solved that problem. And thanks, Mr. Mayor, for meeting with us a couple weeks ago to discuss that issue. We left there and obtained at our own initiative, we obtained a list of the city's media contacts, and we had a volunteer with our organization go ahead and upload that to DEP's public notice about spillage website. So now that's going to fulfill part of our concerns that the news media around will get that information out. It's going to be up to us to contact each of the media and make sure that they do that. Even though we're doing that, it does not address the issue about consent orders, news releases. We've been asking about that. We again asked the City Commission to revisit the policy. We have consent order policy to address that issue, to get news releases out when consent orders are being considered and actually when they actually get approved. As you recall, DEP only requires a small 1-inch by 4-inch notice in the newspaper. So we are looking to hopefully meet with staff and yourself to discuss revising that particular policy you passed a couple of months ago. That's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, our next speaker.
We only have a couple of other speakers, and they're all on public hearing items, so no further unagended.
All right, is there anybody here that would like to speak on non-agended items that came out? Yes, ma'am. You want to come join us and just please fill out a card after the fact? That'd be great. Okay, we'll track it down.
I apologize for not having that, but we'll hunt that down.
Sure. Your name and address for the record, please. You have 3
My
minutes.
name is Sheila Parrish, and I live at 1306 Volusia Street. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners and everyone that's on the board. I'm here today because I am trying to get help for my house, a house that I inherited from my grandmother. The Tallahassee Urban Lease has did a remodel on it 2 times. The last time was 2098. And I've been trying to get help. I have went to the City of Tallahassee. I have talked to several. I also emailed you all, 5 of y'all, I think, that's up here. I emailed a letter of my concern about trying to get help. I have went to the city, like I said, and I talked to Mr. Curtis. Well, I talked to several people, and it's in my letter. I'm sorry. Just a little emotional right now, but trying to get some help for my house. My grandmother left me and my mother. My mother passed 2 years ago. The city said that they were going to help us to get the house done, and at 2 weeks before everything was done, they said that we was over $100 a budget, so they didn't do anything. So now the house is deteriorating. We have foundation problems and roofing, and I'm just trying to get help. I went to the Urban Lease. The Urban Lease sent me to the city. The city told me that they wouldn't be able to help me last year till the end of last year. I talked to them again this year. They said they won't be able to help me until the end of this year. Mr. Richardson, someone from your office called me this morning, told me that they got my letter that I emailed to you, and that there was nothing that they can do until October when when there's another opening for the applications. So I'm just seeking help, trying to get help to a house that I'm living in that is decaying on me in front of my face, and there's nothing I can do. And I'm just trying to get help. So is there somewhere else that I can go? She did tell me to call Community Actions. I called them before I came here, and I still haven't gotten any answer from them. I tried to get in contact with Mr. Taylor, that's at the Urban Lease. I've left several messages for him and still have not gotten anywhere. Mr. Kemp is the only one that the Urban Lease that was trying to help me. So I'm just trying to seek help.
You are in the right place. So with the blessing of the city manager, let me introduce you to Director Abena Ojitayo. Abena, raise your hand. That is Director of Housing Services here for the City of Tallahassee. If you just walk right over and start the conversation, she is the one that can make it happen.
Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm encouraged by that, but let's give Abena an opportunity to assess the situation before we say she can make it happen.
Of course.
Because if we don't have any money, she can't make it happen.
We do have the problem. Yeah. Well, we do have the foundation program, both inside the CRA, but the city program as well. And I know that Abena can help address that issue.
Okay. Address is good. Address the issue, not make it happen.
I am telling you the direction I just received from the city manager.
Okay. All right. I'll tell him.
Ms. Parrish, please connect with Ms. Ojitayo, and we'll see how we can help. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak on unagenda? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Boss
Mayor, I do
man.
have a couple of other cards that I've just gotten, including O'Neill Jackson.
Oh, okay. So, boss man, come on up. Good to see you. Name and address for the record, please, sir.
O'Neill Jackson, Jr. Address is 844 North Macomb Street. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. I'm here today to talk on the all-American city that has pushed some of its laundry under the carpet. For several years, many of years, we have talked about the Lincoln High School property that's owned by the school board and Lee Park. Now, over the years, we get well, they don't want to do this, they don't want to do that, and that's the end of it. But now, we don't even hear anything on it. The property in front of Leon High School is still being used, and it has been improved a hell of a heap, okay? The property at Macomb Street, which is Lee Park, the NIMS Beasley Park over here on Tram Road, and the park there on Magnolia. Kids have to run in the woods to use the restroom, but we're an all-American city. See, we are now putting more than several $1 million out there in Southwood in an athletic complex that Southwood only sprang up a couple of years ago. We also, and I don't know the extent of it, how much you all are involved, but we're giving Doak Camel Stadium $40 million to be used, what, 8, 9, 10 times a year? All right? Now, some of that money could be used in my neighborhood, quote, unquote, the Frenchtown area, as you all say. We need a dental clinic. Look at the people in our area that's homeless, not only in our area, but in the city of Tallahassee, that's homeless. And you look at their mouths. They got the Mola Express down there for kids, but nothing for adults. Some of that money could go that way. Something else we could put some money into, and I'm gonna say a soup kitchen, right there at Lincoln High School.
You have another 30 seconds.
I know it would go fast. A soup kitchen. Been saying here in some of the churches prepare meals, you know, often. But if we had a soup kitchen daily from about 11 to 3 o'clock, people could go by and get a hot meal. Right there in Lincoln, we have the kitchen. You probably need to upgrade it. But that could happen. But I think you all need to do something about that Lincoln High School property. Now, we have bought Norwood Mall.
You're at 3 minutes.
Okay, we bought that, pushed it down, another $25,000, $50,000. We can get that Lincoln High School property and get it cleaned up.
Thank you.
Somebody don't think it's in a good neighborhood. All right.
Thank you. And you are correct that the property is owned by the Leon County School Board, and I will be sure to bring it back up when we have the mayor-chair meeting coming up shortly.
Well, we just need to go ahead and get the property and take care of it because it's in the heart of town.
Sure.
Yeah, it's in the heart of town.
Boss man has enough money to write the check for that. So he can go ahead and write that check. But Mr. Mayor, I wanted to say something to him about the soup kitchen. Mr. Bellamy and the Frenchtown neighborhood group, they have the what is it? The hub?
Frenchtown Heritage Hub.
The Frenchtown Heritage Hub, where I understand they do meals out of there for schools.
But and what I was saying on that soup kitchen is to prepare meals and let the homeless
absolutely they could
walk in and get it. I don't know anything about that. I was told that if you were trying to invent or whatever on that kitchen down there at Georgia and Martin Luther King, I think.
That's the
that's it. You need to talk to Mr. Bellamy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, Frenchtown, through their Neighborhood First plan, has been granted or has been allowed $6.4 million to do whatever they've put in their Frenchtown plan in Frenchtown. So I don't know if maybe, you know.
Well, Commissioner, I'm going to say this about that.
Yes, sir.
There are too many splinter groups, and each one have their own agenda. There's no comprehensive plan and outlook for the community.
Okay.
Everybody got their own agenda.
Watch me as I back away.
You know what I'm talking about.
All right. Thank you. Sounds good. All right, we have no other public comment. We've got 10 minutes. Do y'all want to take a break and come back for the public hearing at 6 o'clock, and then we could do sharing of ideas after that?
Yeah.
All right, we'll take a quick 10-minute recess.
I've been to that.
At 6 o'clock, I'd love to call the public hearing to order. I believe we have 2 items on the public hearing tonight, 15.01. Madam Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 15.01, first and only public hearing on ordinance number 22-Z-01, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee amending the Canopy Plan Unit Development on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee, located on 505 acres in the western half of Wilani Toe at the southeast corner of the intersection of Flashman Lane and Centerville Road on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. The recommended action is option 1, adopt ordinance 22-Z-01, thereby amending the Canopy PUD concept plan based on the findings and conditions of the Planning Commission, the information contained in the agenda item, and any evidence presented at the hearing hereon. Any ex parte disclosures concerning this item are available via the hyperlink included in the agenda item as published in the board docs system.
All right, Ms. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this particular item at the public hearing?
Yes, sir. On item 1501, we have Terry Ryan and then Gary Hunter.
Mr. Ryan, good to see you. Name and address for the record, please.
Come up. Terry Ryan, representing the residents of Centerville Road Group, 2538 Stonegate Drive. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, what you're seeing on your screen right now is what I look at and see every morning, every night as I come out of Stonegate subdivision and the other 10 to 15 subdivisions we have along Centerville Road and other residents. See, and this is not what was in existence just 3 or 4 years ago. It used to be a beautiful scene coming out, many, many trees, vegetation, and this right here, what you're seeing here is the gas line easement. There was a definite path going down that way, but on the left and right, many, many old growth hardwood trees, but no more. They were planned to remain. However, development violations that we saw a couple of years ago damaged a once successful percolation rate. It went from upland area development, or it went from an upland area designation to a lowland designation with considerable percolation problems. My permit lawsuit against Water Management District a few years ago, 3 years ago, required quarterly percolation reports for 3 years. This 3-year requirement was recently renewed with Water Management District with me due to continuing percolation issues. That's what killed the trees that you see here. I filed a formal complaint with the city about dying trees several months ago, 9 months ago, as I remember. It went through the code enforcement without any kind of notice to myself that it was going before the code enforcement board. I'm a complainant. I should have received some kind of notice. That's disappointing. A meager financial penalty was levied to the developer. 8-foot trees were required, were approved, and decades are going to pass before I or any of the other residents of Centerville Road and other people that pass by here before we see any kind of change in this. Now, naturally, since it is a lowland designation, we're going to see lowland type of trees, but still it's going to take decades to replace what we have previously saw.
You're at about 30 seconds.
Residents of Centerville Road request the city, either through this agenda item or through the city manager's office, to consider higher penalties to developers when this kind of thing happens. Larger trees, can we get larger trees than the 8-foot that's been approved by the code enforcement? and complainants be notified as things proceed through the process, and especially to the Code Enforcement Board. If you haven't recently, I invite you to drive also through Canopy and see how much old-growth trees are being lost needlessly. 2 weeks ago, I came through and made many pictures of 30, 40-foot high piles of trees. Thank you all.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Clerk.
Next is Gary Hunter, and then we'll have a speaker via WebEx.
Mr. Hunter, your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Gary Hunter, 119 South Monroe Street, Tallahassee, Florida, here on behalf of the applicant, the developer of the site. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Good to see you all. I'm here on behalf of Ox Bottom Mortgage Holdings. I will say that the pictures that we just saw have nothing to do with the application before us today. This application was approved by the Development Review Committee 5-0, by the Planning Commission 5-0. Frankly, it's a minor adjustments to the overall 500-plus acre plan of the PUD out in Canopy. It's done with full support of the city staff. We took the city staff's suggested recommendations, revisions to this PUD, and they've been implemented. We have no concerns with those. They're more than acceptable. It's important, frankly, to have diversity of housing in this community for reasons that we're all aware of, particularly today. The most significant change, and I wouldn't consider it significant, frankly, is it allows apartment complex where previously there had been single-family housing, and we all know, all within, by the way, the confines of what's allowed under the PUD already. So we're not increasing the density or intensity allowed within the PUD. We all are aware of the need for apartment complexes in lieu of housing because, frankly, the cost of housing is beyond many people's means, whereas apartments are not. And so, frankly, I'm happy to answer any questions you all have, but otherwise, there's no sense of going through the minor changes we're making to the PUD. And with that, I'll be quiet. We appreciate your support. If you've been out to Canopy, you see that it is rapidly changing. And to all of your credit and my client's credit for being able to develop the mix of uses in that neighborhood the way they've developed them. And did they have a violation a while, like 3 years ago? Yes, they did, and that's been corrected. And I would say to you, very few clients I represent that have 500 acres or more make it through the process without having a violation of some form that they have to correct. I mean, it's just part of doing business, not because they intend to have a violation, but because it happens, and they correct it and move on, and that's what happened in this case. So we appreciate your support. Again, I welcome any questions you all have, and otherwise, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Clerk.
Our next speaker is Stephen Martin. Should be connected via WebEx.
Mr. Martin, your name and address for the record, please.
You'll need to adjust your microphone. We're not able to hear you.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh. Yeah, and sorry, my name appears 4 times. There's only one of me. All right. I've closely followed this development for quite some time, and there have been more than one violation. So don't be misled by what Mr. Hunter just said. At last month's Planning Commission meeting, as what you've been presented, there was no mention of those violations in the literature. I asked why at the meeting, and I was told that they were not considered germane or relevant. Well, that's a matter of personal judgment. And as you just heard from Mr. Hunter, they'd rather they not be considered relevant. But there's others, like Mr. Ryan, who would disagree. And I too would disagree. I think what's happened in the past is a good predictor of what to expect in the future. And that this is certainly something that should be taken into account by you in the decisions you're going to be making. This is just one more example of what I consider a lack of open transparency. One of you has regularly pointed out your past experience on the Planning Commission and said that it's got a thoroughly vetted process, perhaps in your mind and that of the developer. But I consider not including these items to not be a thorough vetting. Last month's City Commission meeting, residents from Canopy came and spoke to you about issues they have with noise from some entertainment center and pointed out the developers had not kept their word with them. That's not the first time the developers failed to keep their word. As they promised us back in 2016, it's been about 5.5 years since they cleared over there. But they promised Centerville Road wouldn't notice any of the development along Centerville Road. Well, you can take a drive out there like Mr. Ryan suggested, and you notice the development. So you've got ear sores for the residents there and an eyesore for everybody around. I've spoken with staff about this and asked them, do they think this land is in better condition today than it was 6 years ago before this development? Almost all of them say, I have no comment.
You're at about.
They don't want to answer that. One off the record did come out and say, no question, it was better then. All of them agree it could have been developed far better. So rather than come pushing this through as if no problems have occurred, I suggest you acknowledge all the problems there have been.
You're at 3 minutes.
And commit yourself to proceeding from here on to avoid those problems being repeated, rather than downplay them like the developer and their lobbyist, Mr. Hunter, asked you to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Clerk.
Mayor, I have no other speakers on item 1501. That's the last one.
Let's turn it to commissioner discussion. Correction. Anyone? I will make the motion for option number 1, the recommended action. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
All right, there's a
sorry.
second. There's
I
a
was
second to the
distracted.
motion by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 4-0 with the Mayor Pro Tem out of chambers. We are on item number 15.02. Madam Attorney.
Thank you. Item number 15.02 is the first and only public hearing on ordinance number 21-Z-27AA. This is a continuation of the first public hearing held on November 10th, 2021, and then continued to December 8th, 2021, and then continued to this public hearing on February 16th, 2022. An ordinance of the City of Tallahassee amending the English property plan unit development on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee, located on 744 acres on both sides of Blairstone Road, generally south of Orange Avenue, north of Tram Road, east of Rickards High School, and west of the Capitol Circle southeast on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. The recommended action is option 1, continue public hearing on ordinance number 21-Z-27AA to the March 23rd, 2022 City Commission meeting at 6:00 p.m. in the City of Tallahassee City Commission chambers at City Hall. Any ex parte disclosures concerning this item are available via the hyperlink included in the agenda item as published in the board docs system.
Excellent. Okay. Mr. Clerk, do we have any speakers on this item?
We do. We have several speakers on this item, Mayor. The first is Ramona Abernathy Payne.
Abernathy Payne, good to see you. Your name and address for the record, please.
Ramona Abernathy Payne, 2006 East Indian Head Drive. Notice the green masks. We're not wearing red shirts tonight, we're wearing green masks. Regarding the English HUD, I encourage you to honor staff's request to continue the item. The project is not ready for development. A group of neighbors in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods around the area of the PUD have been trying to meet with the developer, with the applicant, with the owners, to improve the plans for moving forward with this development. There are a lot of concerns about environmental features. It's a karst environment, karst geology. There are sinkholes and springs and wildlife and many environmentally sensitive issues that have not yet been addressed in the plan. We've got concerns about traffic issues that have not been addressed, and even the schools have not been addressed. So basically, the planning is not yet complete. So I would encourage you tonight to, yes, again, continue the item, and further, I would ask you to encourage staff and the applicant to work with the neighbors, to meet with the neighbors, to hear our concerns, and help us help them build a better development. We don't want this to look like the Canopy development. We want it to reflect the stellar reputation that the English family has in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Clerk.
Kiki Litchford, and then Stephanie Cecil.
Thank you so much for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
It is Kiki Litchford, 1721 Silverwood Drive in Tallahassee. I am a homeowner within 1,000 yards of the planned unit development, and I echo the requests that were made by Ramona. One of the things that makes Tallahassee such a unique city is the way it's preserved so much of its beautiful old growth forest. It is the right of the owners to develop their land, but I have several concerns about the way that this rezoning is going to affect the surrounding neighborhoods. The first is flooding, which is already a hazard for many of the homes in the area. The existing dense forest helps slow and absorb the water during storms and hurricanes. Zoning the forest for commercial use and the medium density housing complexes proposed here will lead to hundreds of acres of trees being clear-cut and paved over for parking lots and multi-story apartment complexes, which will lead to more homes down the hill, to flooding and risking toxic runoff making its way into our ponds and springs. My second concern is the strain this will put on the existing infrastructure in the area, especially the roads. South Blairstone, Orange Avenue, Paul Russell, and Appalachie are already fairly congested during rush hour, and we see quite a few car accidents that happen very frequently at several specific intersections in those areas. Adding more cars and pedestrians without a plan to adjust the road capacity is just going to make it more dangerous. My final concern today is the impact that this is going to have on the local wildlife of the area. The English planned unit development is bordered on two sides by Capitol Circle, and that leaves very few directions for local wildlife to migrate. If deforestation and loss of habitat are happening in this area, we're already seeing those drive wild animals into the residential areas and neighborhoods, and we're seeing things like coyotes and alligators that are appearing in people's backyards, which is both a threat to residents and to their pets. So a piecemeal development proposal for more than 750 acres is just not good long-term city planning, and I ask you to continue this item for those reasons. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Stephanie Cecil, to be followed by Nita Davis.
Thanks for coming out. Your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Stephanie Cecil, 1306 Tuccinini. So in reference to the Hathaway project, I asked for a continuance. I completely agree with the previous speakers concerning the potential damage to the aquifer, the loss of animal habitat, the increase in traffic and noise problems, as well as the risk of flooding of people's homes. I understand that this project is a small piece of the English property, but what happens here affects the rest of the entire parcel. I also concur with the statements concerning the importance of the existing karst system. Karst features interact with the environment to produce complex ecosystems supporting plants, animals, and microorganisms, which in many cases can exist nowhere else. I cannot stress enough that this fragile area needs to be mindfully managed and possibly preserved. I would also like to bring up a bigger picture of the failing business as usual mentality to urban development. Urban forests provide a variety of benefits to people, meaning their presence or their absence can and will contribute to unequal outcomes in health, wealth, and overall well-being. Green space can help make neighborhoods less vulnerable to climate change health risks by lowering temperatures, improving the air quality, and might mitigate flooding. According to a new report from the World Economic Forum, the loss of natural areas and declining biodiversity are putting the economies of many cities around the globe at risk. According to the report, about 44% of GDP in cities around the world is at risk of environmental disruption by flooding, drought, intense heat, and pollution. That's about $31 trillion of loss. Smart urban growth that prioritizes the vitality of a community's economy and its quality of life includes revitalizing downtown and older neighborhoods. New smart growth projects can and should be located on underused parcels of urban land. Channeling new growth to already developed areas help revive older communities while protecting our critically necessary green space. Not only does this kind of thoughtless development damage the environment, but it's also expensive. Taxpayers and local government end up subsidizing the extension of roads, water and sewer lines, and other infrastructure to serve poorly developed, poorly planned developments. I encourage our city officers to focus on the whole picture, not just a single element. And it's time to tighten up the policies and practices that leverage the strengths of Tallahassee natural environment and demand that developers up their game to include sustainable green infrastructure and design in their proposals for the future of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please, Mr. Clerk.
Next speaker is Nita Davis. The last in-person speaker will be Mark Okasako.
Thank you so much for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Nita Davis, and I live at 1111 Paul Russell Road. My family's lived on Paul Russell Road since they bought the property from Mr. Paul Russell pretty much back in the 50s. He was the first one there. Well, anyway, we've seen a lot of changes, never had any problems. This is going to be a big problem. And my main concern, which I mentioned before when I was here, is we're looking at something that is going to directly affect the Wakulla Springs. Now, I have some pictures. I'm not sure how to show you.
There's a camera
That
right
camera right there.
Right here?
Yes, ma'am, if you look up on the screen.
Okay. That is Blue Sink. And for all you old timers, that was on the south side, still is, best place around. We all grew up swimming in it. Okay. Now, let's fast forward a little bit here. Every couple of years I go out there. For a while you couldn't because, you know, they had it blocked off because they thought it would come back. Now, I was out there a couple weeks ago. Now, of course, that's a couch. Really part of it. It gets better. Here you go. Doesn't really show the muck as good as it could. Now, here you go. Here's another one. Doesn't, again, show the muck as good as it clearly could. Now, we had a Zoom meeting a few weeks back, and we had a hydrology report talk about the protection of our springs in Leon County and how many feet setback around each spring, and went on and on and on. Well, this is how we're protecting our springs. And this is not that far from the English property. And I was at the 2012 Zoning Commission when they passed the zoning for the English property, and there was dishonesty between the attorney, the English attorney, and the board, and the caveat was the board said, we cannot piecemeal this property together until we get a hydrology report. That was the third time that attorney was there, and the third time he came without it. And that time, he assured the zoning board that Mr. English, and I said this last time, would never cut his trees, so why worry about it?
You have about 20 seconds.
Okay, so I am asking for a continuance. I absolutely agree with everybody. We have the world's deepest freshwater spring sitting at our back door. This isn't a Wakulla thing. This isn't a Leon County thing. The state should be involved in this. We have a treasure, and we are responsible just as much as anyone to protect this. And what's happening now and the development of this will absolutely just put the ruin to it. You might as well just stamp it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sorry about, I get a little passionate.
Nope, thank you. Clerk, our next speaker.
Is Mark Okasako.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Okay. My name is Mark Okasako, 1689 Silverwood Drive. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. I would like to address my concerns about how the stormwater of the PUD will be handled. If constructed according to the current design, there will be a massive increase in stormwater runoff. This is because most of the forest will be replaced by impermeable surfaces like buildings, roads, and parking lots. Water will not be absorbed into the ground and will become runoff. And there are two ways that this runoff can be handled. First, it can be done on the property. However, this would not be a good idea considering the geology of the area. For example, sending stormwater to sinkholes would be bad. There would be a good chance that runoff going into a sinkhole would enter the karst conduit system and get into the Floridan aquifer and go on to Wakulla Springs. Even the closed basin by Hathaway may be a problem. The expert I've been speaking with has said from the aerial photos and the maps he's been looking at, it looks like it is a sinkhole. The other way is for the city to manage the stormwater. This would be preferable since the city has plenty of experience with stormwater management. The question is where the runoff will be directed. One possibility is Lake Jackson, another Lake Munson. Lake Jackson would be preferable. It's larger, it's to the north, which is away from Wakulla Springs, and it has better stormwater treatment facilities like the one by McGinnis Arm. However, it may not be feasible since part of the path would be going uphill. Lake Munson is the other option. While better than keeping the water on the property, there are problems. The lake is already carrying a heavy stormwater load, and it has a history of water quality problems. The treatment facilities are not as good as Lake Jackson's, and once the treated water is released, it goes into a nearby sinkhole, and at least part of that water goes on to Wakulla Springs. Regardless of how the runoff is handled, it would be best to keep the total volume as low as possible. The best way to do this is to lower the amount of impermeable surfaces, which would mean fewer buildings, less roof area, and smaller parking lots. A conservation easement running the length of the property would help slow down and absorb runoff, and would also act as a wildlife corridor. For the yards of the houses, having more trees and less grass lawns would have a similar effect. Turf grass does not retain water as well as trees or meadow plants because the roots are shallower and the soil is more compacted. Also, having less grass lawns means less fertilizer and reduces the amount of nitrogen that can get to Lake Munson and Wakulla Springs. So to conclude, there's more than one approach to stormwater management. If there is less stormwater runoff to begin with, then the remainder is easier to manage. And I do agree with the previous speakers about continuous to the March meeting. So thank you again for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, our next speaker.
We have one connected via WebEx, that is Stephen Martin.
Mr. Martin, your name and address for the record, please.
I don't know if you get an echo effect, but I do, and I'm sorry about that. I do want to echo what the people before me have said, so you're hearing an echo of an echo. I said at this December meeting about this being eerily similar to the Wilani canopy development. And ironically, fear about that was mentioned by the initial speaker from this item. Like Wilani, large PUD, It's large acreage parcel, multi-generational family ownership. And apparently, as I said then, the current generation doesn't appreciate it like their forefathers did. Since your last meeting, as was mentioned by a prior speaker, there was a Zoom meeting discussing this property. There was a person from Growth Management who stated that your environmental permitting process is stringent. Some of us would strongly disagree with that. At that Zoom meeting, concerns about stormwater management that you've heard tonight were brought up. And it was asked if there's any master stormwater plan that's been undertaken for this. And the response was there is not, that they aren't going to take a master plan. They're going to do it piecemeal. Well, if this were stringent, I think they would go for a master, much more comprehensive and thorough and preventative stormwater management plan. It's hard for me to consider these permitting processes that I've experienced with Wilani, as well as this, to be stringent. I mean, after Canopy's experience, I would expect a better and more comprehensive approach to this particular PUD. Stringent is a judgmental relevant term, means different things to different people. What's stringent in one place wouldn't be considered stringent in another. Florida's got a very open approach, pro-growth and development. And I'm sure what's practiced here may be more stringent than in Jefferson or Gadsden County, or in Georgia or maybe Alabama. But you go to the Northeast, you go to the West Coast and some other parts of this country, and they would tell you this is not very stringent. So it's a relative judgmental term. At this December commission meeting, I noted the mayor's Arbor Day proclamation and other comments that have been made by the city, yourselves, other personnel.
You have 30 seconds.
About trees and appreciation of it. Much of the English PUD is heavily wooded. Let's hope your actions on this PUD reflect your word, follow your word about it. Now have an opportunity, an additional month to think this through. Let's try and be consistent and have our actions follow our words. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, do we have any other speakers on this item?
I have no other speakers on this item.
Colleagues, any objection to the continuance? Motion made by the Mayor Pro Tem for staff recommendation, option number 1, which is continuing the item for another month, seconded by Commissioner Porter. Correct? Mm-hmm. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. Let the record reflect as well, Madam Attorney, that on 15.01, I thought the Commissioner, the Mayor Pro Tem was out of chambers. He was actually in chambers and voted in favor. It was my mistake, so let the record reflect, Mr. Clerk, that the Mayor Pro Tem was in favor, and it was a 5-0 vote on 15.01 in favor of the motion. Yes, sir. Okay, do we have any other items come before us at the public hearing tonight? Seeing none. Make one more last call for any citizens that want to speak on non-agenda items. I'll give the opportunity since we did it earlier, but anybody else show up? All right, let's move into commissioner comment, sharing of ideas. Commissioner Porter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I only have 2 quick items. One is just to share that obviously we're all familiar with the Art of the Box program, and I think we called it a little bit something different when we passed it at the city. I had a meeting with Betsy Couch, and she, I thought, had a really fun idea, which was in coordination with whatever we're planning for a bicentennial. She had the idea of having a goal and engaging the community, receiving sponsorships for doing something like 200 boxes by our bicentennial. And I thought that's something that could be fun. And so I'm not asking for a motion or anything, but I thought that I would just share that and I don't know if that's something she's going to pursue, but I thought it was fun and something I might try and work on her with and bring back to us. My second comment is really just a question for Mr. Cook. I'm not sure if, and just to share with the commission, something I've been talking with Mr. Cook about is on our, if you've ever tried to be on board docs on your phone, it's really difficult to scroll through things. And since so many people, access the internet on their mobile devices, it was something that we were looking into, whether Board Docs offers a mobile option or not, whether we can have a PDF, because I know that I try to do it all the time, and it's very frustrating with the way that it's set up, because you'll try to read the content of an item and it'll redirect you to the sidebar. And so I wasn't sure, Mr. Cook, if you had an update, or I just wanted to make you aware that that was a conversation I was having with Mr. Cook.
And we have had those conversations. Board Docs does not provide that mobile option that Commissioner Porter is referring to. We're looking to see if there's a way to satisfy the PDF option. Otherwise, and I don't know that that's going to be a particularly viable option just due to the nature of a PDF. Once you've set it, if you have modifications to the agenda and other things, you want to be sure people have access to the current and active items. So we may to reach a mobile option, might have to look at other options. Not making that as a decision here at the dais, but that is the answer to the question. We don't have a mobile option with Board Docs, so if there was a demand for that, we would have to look at other options.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a meeting this afternoon with Mr. Freddie Miller. Mr. Freddie Miller lives in one of those neighborhoods that Commissioner Proctor has been talking to us about potential annexing in. And we had a great conversation and with Mr. Tedder, and the two of them are going to continue to talk and work. There's some complications, but there's some hurdles. But aside from that, Mr. Miller made a suggestion that instead of doing a gun buyback and instead of doing some other things with the gun, that we should do a bullet buyback. Buy back the bullet, get the bullets, get the ammunition. And he said that, and he's done some research on this, on what other states are doing. And what he's shared with me, and I thought that it was worth bringing forward, is to look at, because Florida doesn't require guns to be registered, so people can take guns from cars and what have you, and then they can go buy ammunition without any background check, proof, or anything. So he was just recommending that we look at possibly, and I guess I look at their chief or somebody, possibly seeing what it would, and Madam Attorney, what it would look like to require background checks or something else along when someone shows up to buy some ammunition. So I just wanted to, I asked him if he wanted me to share that, and he said that he did. And I appreciate citizens, doing research and thinking out of the box. And a few years ago, a friend of mine who was running for office said that she was running for Congress, and she said, let them keep the guns, but make the ammunition so expensive they couldn't afford it. And so I just wanted to bring that and put it on somebody else's brain that this might be another way to do it. You can keep your gun, but you may not be able to get ammunition for it. So just wanted to share that from a citizen who's engaged. That's all I have.
Excellent. Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't bring any items tonight, but I will say I feel like an old man when I try to use Board Docs on my phone. So I do recognize that hurdle when it clicks off and you're trying to scroll back and forth. I don't know what the solution is either, but I've had that same frustration. So I appreciate you bringing it up. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a couple of announcements. Tomorrow, starting at 11:30 a.m., there's a voting rights rally at the state capitol, at the old Capitol building, and there are a number of organizations that are co-sponsoring that. I've been asked to speak. I was told by my aide that there are 20 people that are have been invited to speak, so that's going to be interesting. But if you want to attend, it's from 11:30 to 1 tomorrow. The event that Pastor Mandrell mentioned, her birthday, citywide birthday celebration, is this coming Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Tom Brown Park, in the back of the park near the children's playground. And she's welcoming the community to come and share in the celebration of her 36th birthday.
That's great.
And then finally, tomorrow, my wife and I celebrate 36 years
Hey, all right.
Welcome to the
of
club.
wedded bliss.
All right.
Thank you, thank you. We celebrated last Saturday, but tomorrow is the official day, February 17th. 36 years, and took me 4 years to convince her to marry me, so we've been together, will be 40 years tomorrow.
Very good. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I have nothing. Everyone, let's have a wonderful evening. We are adjourned.